So why did the people of the Maya likely have to leave? Because their area, which was tropical and wet, became more like Mars because of this SAA effect. Mars is the next best example to show you what happens to a planet when you lose your magnetic field. What happened is that it lost its magnetic dynamo, and when it loses its magnetic dynamo, the solar wind strips the atmosphere completely off it. That's the worst case scenario. That is a true cataclysm. The worst case scenario would be Mars. Could we face an event that's just like the Mayas, that there's going to be places on Earth where we won't be able to live because it won't be safe to do it? One of the globalists who works in media named Elizabeth Colbert, she used to work for New York Times and one of the magazines, New Yorker, I believe. She wrote a book about 10 years ago called The Sixth Extinction. There's going to be different places on Earth that we're going to have to seek to go to so that we're able to do the things we do. Nature's not going to lie to you. The media will. The scientists will.
We know from past events where this is going on. How accurate are you? How are you modeling where you think is safe? Let's get into it.
Well, the simple way to do it is to use magnetometers, and there's lots of different magnetometers to do it. But the single most important thing for all of us is we need to get the swarm data, which is 3 satellites that the European space authorities use to manage the SAA. Because what's happening? The SAA is acting just like the great red spot on Jupiter, and we need that data every 6 months, because what is likely going to happen? As the pole is run to Siberia, we need to know what the effects are in the southern hemisphere and the mid-latitudes, because what does it mean? It means there's going to be really good places, good zip codes, and bad zip codes, and there's not going to be any rhyme or reason to how this goes. Why? We have to pay attention to the thermal haline currents. We have to pay attention to the arthropods, the birds, the bees, and the fish.
I've been on air 32 years, and I remember early on reading mainstream news articles and New Scientist, the nightly news. The magnetic field started changing, and also the pole started moving from where it had been, and people can see this on compasses. And then you've got all the famous clips of Democrats and globalists saying the world's going to end in 2030 and all this. And they say that to create fear, to make you not have kids, make you give up. They tell you you're killing the earth, all the rest of it. But there are big earth-changing events. They thought it was every few million years big comets or asteroids hit the earth. But now that we have satellites, they can see the scars of giant comets and meteor blasts all over the earth. You see the moon, you see them stand out because there's no foliage, there's no water, there's no erosion. But on the Earth, now that we have the satellites, we can see that we get hit a lot more often than they thought. And that's just one example. What are the globalists getting ready for? Why is the pole moving so fast?
So most of the viewers out there need to understand that when climate change is used in the media, it's basically an acronym for magnetic shield failure, because that's effectively what it is. The climate isn't changing, but the magnetic field is. Last time the magnetic field truly collapsed, life was simple. There was only 2 domains of life, bacteria and archaea. This went from about 1 billion years ago all the way up to the Cambrian explosion. What does this really mean? As the magnetic shield of the planet weakens, it allows the solar wind to get closer, but it also allows the Van Allen radiation belts to get closer to Earth. What is the impact of that for biology? Anything that lives on the surface or in the crust, which is the oceans, is going to be heavily deuterated. What does that mean? Deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen. The hydrogen that we are racist to in our biology is protium, which is light hydrogen. Deuterium has an extra neutron on it. And then the third isotope is called tritium. Tritium is radioactive hydrogen. Usually, from all the teaching I've done all over the world about this, I tell people you don't really have to worry about tritium because our magnetic shield takes care of it. Well, that's all well and good until the government released some data. After this paper came out last June, the USGS surveys show that the magnetic pin that used to be in Canada has moved faster in the last 15 years than it has in 320 million years on Earth, since mammals evolved on the planet.
Let's be clear, that's, listeners like, is that even true? No, it's mainstream news. Anybody can register it. The pole is moving very quickly.
Yeah, it's moved from Canada to to Siberia. So that's the one fact that anybody can go and look at.
Hello and welcome. It's the Diamond Report Live. Hope you guys are doing well, and 9:06 p.m., 4/26/26. Yeah, hope you guys are having a good week, good weekend, and I thought that little science lesson there was pretty good stuff. I actually posted the full video of that in our band group earlier this week when I saw it, because I thought it was really, really enlightening. Very good information. They brought up geoengineering, not in that little clip that we just watched, which was like 5 minutes long, but geoengineering is a huge part of it, and you'll note some of the things mentioned there are things that Dane talks about, the sixth great mass extinction and so forth. I think they're onto something, and I didn't really put that together necessarily with the pole shift and all the other things that they were talking about. But this show is looking at breaking news that proves we are living in the end times, and I think that the timeline that they were sort of alluding to there definitely helps, I think, be explained a little bit if Jesus is indeed going to be returning to earth very soon. And I personally believe he will. And you guys know that I've, going back several years, 2019 actually, have been saying on video that I think that Jesus will return in Feast of Trumpets, September 2028. So that's not all that far away. And I know some of you guys say, oh, that's still too far away. And yes, I would agree with that. But things, unfortunately, will get worse before he returns. However, the flip side is, after he returns, after the Battle of Armageddon, there will be 1,000-year millennial reign of Jesus Christ. That is something to look forward to, if you ask me. So let's take a look at the news. Some breaking headlines from this weekend. The third assassination attempt, supposedly, on Donald J. Trump. And I know quite a few folks out there don't ever believe anything that's ever posted about Trump, and whether it's assassination attempts or any of the other things that are talked about with him. And I get it. Yes, he does lie all the time. I personally think this was a real ordeal simply because of the number of people involved. And note, what you don't really hear in the mainstream media, very much at least, is that, or any media, is that the shooter, the would-be shooter who was taken down, not killed, but taken down, did not make it to the ballroom where all the people were. Yes, there was a lot of scurrying around and protecting Trump and J.D. Vance and others, but he didn't make it to the ballroom. And yes, shots were fired. Yes, a policeman was shot, but he had his protective gear on and was not injured. So I don't know. I personally think that this was real, and the reason I think that is because I think there are too many people involved. And as we look at things tonight, we're going to examine how the shooter, the person that is ostensibly the guy who committed this act, knew that there would be a huge lax of security. So we'll look at that as well. So this first one here is from Daily Signal, inside the ballroom, being at the White House Correspondents' Dinner during assassination attempt on Trump. And if you guys missed it, this was, last night, I guess. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. taken out of the ballroom by security agents. So they're leading him out, ushering him out. And, there's quite a bit of video of a lot of this as it was happening. Some of it's pretty grainy, that's typical on these types of things. With the one with the shooter running through the entrance of the hotel, which apparently is the same hotel that 40 years ago Ronald Reagan was shot at or outside of. So it's not, I guess, uncommon, makes out it's D.C., but it's kind of strange. There are some weird coincidences, I will give you that. Suspect in White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting wrote of targeting Trump administration. Cole Thomas Allen, always have to use the full name, 31, is accused of rushing a security checkpoint, armed with a shotgun, handgun, and knives, and exchanged gunfire with law enforcement. So this is the grainy footage I was talking about. I mean, don't all inside security cameras at this point have full HD quality? How come we have to get the copy of, 1,000 degradations down before we can see the actual footage instead of it being crystal clear like it should be? So if I leave this muted, I think this will... Yeah, you can see how fast he runs by. He does dart by quickly. This first guy here, I think this officer is probably the guy that gets shot. But they react quickly. I don't think they're acting. I don't think we're being lied to here on this. And perhaps he would have made it to the ballroom and other shots, other people hit, other shots taken, other people hit, that kind of thing would more likely be the actual thing that would happen if there was a conspiracy as far as was this a setup. And I don't know that there's really any reason to do this as a setup because no one was killed. Yes, he did prove how lax the security was, but really that's about it. White House Correspondents' Dinner gunman Cole Allen sent anti-Trump manifesto, wanted to take out officials. The friendly federal assassin, he called himself, I guess. So here he is. And then, a lot of people reporting on this. We won't spend a lot of time on this tonight. I know many of you guys think that none of this is real. It's all a setup. And I get it. I mean, it makes sense that you would think that. And, Trump does lie. I personally think that there's just too many people involved for this to be completely staged, 100%. And what would be the purpose, really? Watch gunman charges security at White House press dinner. So, we just watched that. I don't think this is any better footage here. Oh, I know what it is. I saved this just because it's a couple seconds right before, I guess. So slightly longer clip. But yeah, he just goes rushing past. The officer was shot but was saved by the fact that he was wearing, obviously, a very good bulletproof vest, Trump said. So, anyway, yeah, I don't know. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go tonight. A lot of the conspiracy theorists, like myself, conspiracy analysts is what I call myself. A lot of people out there are putting out videos talking about a lot of the different pieces to this. And this is one of them I came across from someone named Larkin Diamond, but no relation. This man shows, I'm supposed to say Melania, a card, and she instantly shows horror on her face. Why was Trump smirking like that? Well, Trump looks like he's just listening. And this is the White House press secretary here, and this is Melania. And let me play this. I'll mute it because it's just music. They have it slowed down. And, people were saying, what is this all about? What's with her look on her face and all of that? And what's going on here? But all of this can be explained. I actually found out what was going on right here. Right there is where they heard shots fired. And then now we see the sped up video there. So what's going on here is this guy, I don't remember his name, but I've got it on another page here. This guy is basically doing like a magic trick. And many of you guys know that the press secretary there is many months pregnant right here. And this sheet of paper says Vivian. So he discloses, without knowing ahead of time, discloses what her about to be born baby's name is, Vivian. And that's why Melania was so surprised, because apparently she is reacting to her. Does that make sense? I don't know I guess she's reacting to the two of them. So, and then they start hearing the shots. So this I personally think is explainable. It's not a big deal, just a magic act. And slowed down, it looks highly suspicious, I must admit. But I don't think there's anything to that. And then, this is more what I was talking about earlier. Would-be Trump assassin was dumbfounded by the lack of security at the hotel. This level of incompetence is insane. And thus, the tweet or Truth Social post from Trump later on saying this is why we need the ballroom. What he meant by that is the higher security place to have these events. Instead, they went with this lower security place, and it seems like Trump doesn't seem to care too much about his own personal safety and security when they went ahead with this anyway, when he shouldn't have. But anyways, no harm done, I guess, in this case. I want to focus on something very specific for a moment. This article says, look directly at this quote from a handwritten manifesto found in the hotel room of the alleged shooter here, Cole Allen, who is charged with shooting a Secret Service agent in an attempt to kill President Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So this is what he's talking about. He expected security cameras at every bend, bugged hotel rooms, armed agents every 10 feet, metal detectors out the wazoo. What I got was, who knows, maybe this is nothing, no dang security, not in transport, not in the hotel, not in the event. Yeah, and people were saying how lacked security was. They weren't even necessarily, I don't know if they were going through any metal detectors or not, but they didn't have to show any ID or anything. So, yeah, it seems to me like this is just total incompetence, kind of like what the shooter is saying here. And they basically made it easy. So if you want to say that there's a conspiracy here, perhaps that's it. Perhaps it was the lack of security and allowing for this to happen. Maybe that was the conspiracy, if there is one. But I don't think it was fake. Anyway, it says Allen is dumbfounded by how easy his plan was. He's an engineering major who works as a part-time teacher. He has no firearms training or military training in force-on-force encounters. He was one guy with a gun, and he was gobsmacked by how easy it was to circumvent security ahead of an event where the powerful people in the country would be assembled. Allen did not expect to survive. I'm going to put this next part in larger text so it sinks in. And this is from the article on Not to Be Here. I would also like to extend my appreciation to a great many people, since I will not be likely to be able to talk to them again unless the Secret Service is astoundingly incompetent. So he was okay with giving his life in this matter. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't think anything will come of it simply because of his skin color. And many people who are doing the reporting on this are saying that, there was a shooter and stuff, but they don't really allude to the fact of his skin color or any of that. So, my guess is not much will come out of this. There probably won't be any investigation much, even though he lived. Just like the Thomas Crooks thing was swept under the rug, and just like the shooter down at Mar-a-Lago was also he's in jail, but the story has sort of been put on the back burner, and Trump isn't investigating any of it. So what does that tell you? So I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting. So let's move on. We've got some other things to look at tonight. May have another article or two on that, but I think that's most of that as far as the White House Correspondents' Dinner. All right, this is a new story that came out. Again, breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. This is the kind of stuff that you might see in a situation like that. 14-year-old allegedly, I think it's very obvious, stomped on girl's head after she refused to give her number to him. So note the still frame here. Yeah, basically the video is right here. He asks her for her number, and she says no, and he decides to follow her. She kind of takes off the other direction, and he grabs a hold of her and throws her to the ground. She smacks her head on the concrete and is knocked out, and while she's knocked out laying there, he stomps on her head. 14-year-old black boy was charged with an assault after video shows him allegedly body slamming a teen girl onto a New York City sidewalk and stomping on her head. Video shows that he threatened to knock the Shiite out of her. A report indicated that the 15-year-old girl had refused to give him her phone number. The girl reportedly had injuries that included a concussion, you don't say, bleeding, a possible brain injury, splitting headaches, and a twisted neck. Her mother said the injuries will necessitate ongoing physical therapy, I would think. The suspect's mother, Selma Allen, described her son as a humble Christian and claimed the girl had bullied him at school and called him racial epithets. So there you go. It's her fault, not his fault, that happened to her. She implied that there was a record with the school of the girl bullying the suspect. I doubt that. I doubt that very, very much. Don't you? Anyway, yes, he is a humble Christian because that's what humble Christians do, right? Stomp on 15-year-old girls' heads as they lay on the sidewalk unconscious. Anyway, very sad story. And she most likely has the next quite a few years of her life ruined by this kid. And I'm surprised she wasn't killed, but luckily she wasn't. Anyways, man, it's just total insanity out there. Total insanity. All right, let's look at the next one. We've got quite a few from needtoknow.news. Tonight, U.S. military ends 72-year mandatory flu shot policy. 72 years. There's another one of those numbers, like 33. 33. Well, 72 is 66 plus 6. So 666. If you are keeping track at home. On April 20th, 2026, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, issued a memorandum declaring the annual influenza vaccine is now voluntary for all active and reserve component service members. And the Department of War civilian personnel effective immediately. This likely occurred to save face after forcing the entire military to take the deadly gene transfer injection CV19 VAXX. Anyway, chalk that up. That might be the first good thing that Pete Hegseth has actually done. I don't know. I think that's a good thing. Conservative targeting SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, indicted for fraudulently funding extremist groups. Yeah, so this was from a few days ago, but pretty big story. I think that this was kind of a bone that was thrown in this case. I think, yes, they are going to go after the SPLC, rightfully so. They are, right here, SPLC is manufacturing racism to justify its existence. That's exactly true. That's what they've been doing for a long time. The other part of the story here, though, that it's probably not mentioned in this particular article is that John Brennan will skate. He will not be prosecuted by the same DOJ, which, of course, is the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, this guy that took over for Pam Blondie. So anyway, this says the Southern Poverty Law Center was indicted on federal fraud charges and is accused of illegally raising millions of dollars to pay informants in white supremacist and other extremist groups. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said the SPLC is manufacturing racism to justify its existence. From 2014 through 2023, the SPLC is accused of paying at least $3 million to 8 informants affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, and National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nations affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club, the National Socialist Party of America, and the American Front. FBI Director Patel accused the SPLC of using donors to pay the leaders of extremist groups to stage hate crimes, which is exactly what they're doing. The SPLC paid an unidentified informant who was a member of the leadership group that planned the Unite the Right protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017. The protesters were opposed to the destruction of the monument of Robert E. Lee. This is all a setup. This is all a lie. They were opposed, I would put that in quotes, to the destruction of a monument of Robert E. Lee have been demonized by Democrats for years over the riots that appear to have been staged in Charlottesville, which, of course, all of it was staged. Trump was condemned over the event. Joe Biden used Charlottesville as the reason to run in 2020. But it was all a ruse. It was all fake. And so this is finally coming out. This is almost kind of stuff in a way that Doge would find, or other whistleblowers. So it's good that this is happening. So I don't want to take anything away from that. And they should be held accountable here. I don't know that anyone will. That's the problem. So they will describe what happened and put it out there, and then nothing ever happens to the people in charge. So let's see what happens, but don't hold your breath, right? Most likely, nothing will come of it, but we'll see. And this has been another big story this week. UFO and paranormal researcher David Wilcock reportedly committed suicide, which, of course, he's on record saying that there's no chance that he's going to commit suicide. I don't know if that's embedded here. I saw that earlier. I think it was a post on X, perhaps. David Wilcock, 53, reportedly shot himself to death outside his home in front of local Colorado sheriff's deputies. Well, where is the where are the body cam? Where's that footage? We are reporting on his passing because he was well known. David graduated from the State University of New York at New Paltz in 1995, where he studied psychology. He was not a scientist. Social media is buzzing as people believe his death is connected to the 10 dead and missing scientists, which we talked about last week. Wilcock has made controversial claims over the years. Wilcock was reported to be in debt and made an expensive, bad investment. David Wilcock claimed that he was being cyberstalked. He did have critics online who mocked him and said very rude and crude things about him that may have been a negative influence. He died on April 20th, 2026, and co-wrote a book with Free Win called The Reincarnation of Edgar Casey. That proposes that Mr. Wilcock was the reincarnation of Edgar Casey. They did have a striking resemblance, which is what we're looking at right here. Which, yeah, they do, especially their eyes. Free Win has been rumored to have also died just days before Wilcock's death, but the claims have yet to be publicly confirmed. A post by producer and author Jay Widener claims that Free died on April 18th. So I hadn't heard that anywhere else other than on this article. Yeah, but Edgar Casey is definitely one of those occult type people that people talk about, especially UFO researchers and stuff. But from what I can tell, it's very occult and very dark as far as what Casey was dealing with. So anyway, that is an interesting story, I think, and just happened a few days ago. I wanted to mention that one. Yeah, I have a video actually on some of the ongoing UFO researchers and scientists who have died or supposedly, committed suicide over the last few years, and we're going to look at that in just a little bit. Israel admits its soldiers intentionally smashed Jesus statue in Lebanon. No kidding. IDF soldiers confess moral injuries after Gaza, admitting to killing unarmed civilians, looting homes, and targeting children, all published in Haaretz. Redacted examined the most moral army claim. Here's Redacted, this show. Made by Mike Huckabee on Tucker Carlson's show, IDF Confessions of Atrocities and the Destruction of a Jesus Statue by an Israeli Soldier, said, and the Trump administration's refusal to hold Israel accountable while inflating alleged Iranian abuses. Yeah, it's never the IDF. They're as clean and pure as the wind-driven snow, aren't they? Or maybe not. Anyway, that one is a needtoknow.news article. It says, IDF soldiers are experiencing moral injuries after participating in the abuse and killing of Palestinian civilians in Gaza. It is trauma caused by one's own actions. It typically involves feelings of guilt, shame, rage, disgust, alienation, loss of faith, and breakdown in identity, meaning and a sense of humanity. Tucker Carlson gave his analysis of the destruction of the statue of Jesus and says that there are a lot of people in Israel who hate Christianity above all. Christians are persecuted by extremist Jews in Israel. Oh, I think that's pretty anti-Semitic to be saying that, don't you? Nonetheless, it is true. In 2025, there were 61 assaults on Christians in Israel. American Christian evangelicals have aided Israelis in ethnically cleansing Christians by inciting them to move away for the purpose of helping Israelis stealing the land owned by Christians. Yeah, it really is amazing. It really is amazing how evangelical Christians, believers supposedly, in this country are totally fine with anything Israel does. Doesn't matter what. And then I found this article earlier as well from Israel 365 News, which is a super pro-Israel site. IDF soldiers jailed, dismissed from combat after smashing Jesus statue in Lebanese Christian village. So it's the statue that gets him in trouble, which, rightfully so. But what about all of the thousands, tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands or more Gazans who were killed? 2 Israeli Defense Forces soldiers have been dismissed from combat duty and sentenced to 30 days in military prison following an investigation into the destruction of the statue of Jesus in the Christian village of Debel, D-E-B-E-L, in southern Lebanon. This act drew condemnation from Benjamin Netanyahu, IDF Chief of Staff, Zamir, in Jewish communities worldwide. It's only because they got caught. That's the only reason. They got caught on camera doing this, and that is why they're in trouble. The soldier who smashed the statue with the sledgehammer and the soldier who photographed the act received identical punishments. 6 additional soldiers who witnessed the incident and neither intervened nor reported it have been summoned for clarification discussions, quote unquote, after which further disciplinary measures will be determined. The IDF was unequivocal in its judgment. The soldiers' conduct completely deviated from IDF orders and values. So it's okay to kill tens or hundreds of thousands of humans, but not to smash a statue, which it is a statue of Jesus, don't get me wrong. However, what about all the human lives they've killed? That apparently is fine. Because most of who they're killing are not terrorists. They say everyone that they're killing are terrorists, of course. And that is certainly up for debate. Replacement of the statue. So anyway, this has a little bit more here than I'd seen really anywhere else on what's going to happen with these IDF soldiers who did this dastardly deed, which it was. And then I came across this, which I thought kind of sums things up. So you have the Israeli soldier smashing the head of Jesus Christ statue during operations in southern Lebanon. This is your Judeo-Christian values. This is the Judeo part here. Here's the Christian part here, getting the sledgehammer to the head. And this is what Donald Trump said about it. Not about that, but just about Israel in general. Whether people like Israel or not, they have proven to be a great ally of the United States of America. They are courageous, bold, loyal, and smart. And unlike others that have shown their true colors in a moment of conflict and stress, Israel fights hard and knows how to win, according to President DJT. And this is what they do. So further proof. Kind of sums things up, doesn't it? The downfall of Netherlands, artificial breeding technology and euthanasia programs. Dutch political commentator Johannes Cohenraad warned against new technology leading to 2 men or a single individual gaining the ability to create babies. That wouldn't be human babies, though, would it? I'm just adding that. Euthanasia of children and other destructive policies. Netherlands' pedo party was dissolved in 2022 after its leaders faced legal issues related to child exploitation. Remix News reported that euthanasia is now responsible for 6% of all deaths in the Netherlands. And this figure is increasing every year. According to a report by the Regional Euthanasia Review Committee, 10,341 people died by euthanasia just in 2025. And while 3/4 of the applicants were over 70 years old, one case involved someone between the ages of 12 and 18. So they're all about killing the, and this is only for the native folks of the Netherlands. This is not for all of the influx from the illegals from places like Africa and from Muslim nations. It's not for them. It's just for the natives. The natives who live there in the Netherlands. That's who is being volunteered here for euthanasia. So just remember that part. It says, from AI, new technology may allow embryos to be created using DNA from 2 men, enabling same-sex couples to have children genetically related to both partners. Could you imagine what that would produce? I don't think that would be human. I really don't. This process involves using skin cells from one man to alter the genetics of a donated egg. So it still has to start with a woman here, which is then fertilized with sperm from the other man. Wow, that is insane. So it sounds like really 3 people are involved. Anyways, breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. You think? I thought this picture was pretty funny. HHS, Health and Human Services, shuts down 500 LA hospices. Some were registered to burrito stands and a tire store. So yeah, California Hospice and Palliative Care. This is also doubles as a place called El Burrito Grande, authentic Mexican food. Of course, this is most likely just an AI picture, but it might as well be real. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS Administrator Dr. Oz announced a requirement for all 50 states to audit their Medicare provider networks to address waste and fraud in federal benefit programs. He issued a 10-day ultimatum to governors to investigate Medicare fraud or face defunding. Federal and state officials are clashing over enforcement, and legal challenges are expected. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that 500 hospice businesses have been shut down just in Los Angeles. He gave an example of fraud that was detected because $6,000 per month was paid by the government for a patient that was on hospice but did not die. California's Medicare hospice program is so corrupt that licensed and accredited certified hospice facilities were registered to empty offices, a tire store, and a burrito stand. One California doctor, a dermatologist, charged Medicare $35 million in questionable billing last year. $35 million bucks. Her healthcare provider showed more than $173 million in claims from January 1st, 2018 to September 30th, 2025. Wow. That's just from one doctor. So imagine the level of fraud. I mean, this makes, to me at least, it makes it look like what happened in Minnesota, like small potatoes here. But yeah, California is redefining the fraud definition, if you ask me. Need to know.news. California's Stop Nick Shirley Act. Remember Nick Shirley from the what we're just talking about with the daycares in Minnesota. He's the one that brought all of that information to the forefront with his podcast. California's Stop Nick Shirley Act protects fraud. It is sponsored by CHIRLA, Shirla, leftists tied to anti-ICE riots. California Bill AB 2624, dubbed the Stop Nick Shirley Act, that kind of says it all, violates the First Amendment and criminalizes citizen journalism, like the viral videos produced by Nick Shirley. The bill proposes penalties of up to $10,000 in imprisonment for people who are found to have disclosed personal information of individuals working in immigrant service roles. $10,000 bucks. So don't you think that will stop all of the citizen journalism in California? It seems like it would to me. The bill is sponsored by the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, called CHIRLA, which is a nonprofit organization that has received criticism from California Republicans. The Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, CHIRLA, is connected to the anti-ICE riots in Los Angeles last summer that featured protesters torching Waymo cars, attempts to kill cops, mobbing of ICE officers, and dropping of cement blocks from overpasses to hurt or stop law enforcement. CHIRLA has received federal and state grants, in addition to grants from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. Father Luis Olivares, the pastor of Our Lady Queen of Angels, one of the most notorious figures in the sanctuary movement, was CHIRLA's first director. So this is all about the Stop Nick Shirley Act. Bill is authored by the wife of California Attorney General Rob Bonta. The wife, she's not even elected, looks to restrict the public from posting personal information of individuals connected to immigration support services such as legal clinics, healthcare providers, and nonprofit organizations. I don't know that Nick Shirley even did any of that. AB 2624 also extends the Safe at Home program and aims to protect individuals who fear for their safety. I think what they mean here is not protect individuals so much as protect the fraudsters. That's who they're protecting. Bonta's proposed bill goes as far as imposing monetary penalties of up to $10,000 in imprisonment for people who are found to have disclosed personal information in individuals working in individuals who work in immigrant service roles. So that's all you got to do. Probably just showing someone's face on camera would do it, I'm guessing. And don't you know, the judges will be solidly on the side of the people that pass this. So they will, I'm sure, start imprisoning people if this passes. Hopefully it won't, but my guess is it will. It is California after all. All right, a couple articles from the Liberty Beacon. SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, indicted for fraud after sending $3 million to racist and white supremacist organizations. Yeah, I was surprised to see Patel involved in something halfway good, but of course it's, not really up to him per se, but hopefully they will hold someone accountable here, but I kind of doubt it. It'll all be dropped before long, most likely, with nothing happening. And in fact, probably the SPLC will get further funding. But we do have a video on this in a little bit. We'll watch in a break time coming up. All right, Liberty Beacon. But this one is interesting. Amazon in the U.S. bans a bestseller called The Camp of the Saints. The Camp of the Saints. So if you want a good book to read, this is probably the one you should read. It's talking about this book and the Streisand effect, meaning it's going to sell a lot of books probably. Right off the bat, notice the number 17. Banning anything leads us to noticing it. Over here. The Streisand effect, as the publisher notes on Twitter. This video commentary on YouTube, it's a YouTube link here, gives us some information about this book, a parable of what happens to France when a million Indians invade it within a very short time. This commentary calls the book an indictment of the West for its self-hatred, which has led to its own destruction. Indeed. So it sounds like it's talking about, at least in part, it sounds like it's describing what's actually happening over there in Europe right now with the Muslim immigration. It says on Friday, April 17th, the conservative publisher Valbon Books, which publishes the latest English edition of Jean Raspail's seminal novel called The Camp of the Saints, was informed that Amazon was removing the book from sale in the United States. The e-commerce giant is acting as a censor towards a leading author who has been recognized and established in the French and international literary landscape for decades. The new translation of the 1973 novel, produced by the publisher Ethan Rundell, has been available on Amazon since the summer of 2025 and has been a resounding success there. It went on sale, the publisher states, no fewer than 20,000 copies have been sold, with an average reader rating of 4.8. Raspail's book, now over 50 years old, has become a benchmark for its uncompromising portrayal of a Europe sinking under a tidal wave of migration that nothing seems able to stop. Again, exactly what's going on over there. The book, which was initially shared only by a circle of a few happy French conservatives, is now recognized as a major literary work, a dystopian novel that deciphers with uncommon narrative and dramatic intensity the material and moral collapse of our civilization, wallowing in resignation in the face of the arrival of, quote, the other, adorned with every virtue. Certain iconic quotes are now widely shared on social media in French, but also in English. The book had been made available in translation for several years already, but Rundell's work has given it new visibility. Amazon deemed the novel content to be, quote, offensive. Yet there's nothing shocking in these lines, written in a lively style that is at once tragic and epic. A shiver is bound to run down the spine of anyone who loses themselves in this work of speculative fiction, just as when reading the most poignant pages of Huxley or Orwell. Yes, but it's just too offensive. Meaning too offensive to describe exactly what's happening over there. Too offensive to those in charge. They're the ones that are offended, not the people reading the book. Anyway, that one's on the Liberty Beacon. Need a new book to read? I guess that would be the one to go find somewhere. Can't get it from Amazon, though. The Camp of the Saints. We've talked about this guy a couple times over the last couple weeks on this show. New Hungarian PM vows to arrest Netanyahu if he enters the country. I like him already. Hungary must arrest Netanyahu if he visits, Magyar says. Let's hope this is true, but will Netanyahu actually go to Hungary? I don't think so. A reminder that the white hat military picked up criminal Netanyahu some time ago. It's surely clear that doubles have been put in his place, even to a blind man. If readers can't see the chess moves here, we don't know what to tell you. New Hungarian PM vows to arrest Netanyahu if he enters the country. Budapest is considering reversing its decision to withdraw from the ICC, stating that wanted leaders must be taken into custody. Yeah, and then you got Trump out there demanding that Netanyahu be pardoned. But this guy is saying we're going to arrest him if he comes into our country. The ICC issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and his former defense minister Yoav Gallant in November of 2024 over his role in leading Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza, with the warrant requiring members states to detain individuals sought by the court if they enter into their territory. So how about that? I don't see that happening, but still, step in the right direction at least. All right. Is war with Iran about nuclear stockpile or controlling the Strait of Hormuz? I would say yes. This is written by Patrick Wood, who heads up this website, technocracy.news. I posit that the war against Iran has nothing to do with nuclear material, but rather it was about gaining control of the Strait of Hormuz. That said, remember that the media is always reflective, not causative, which whatever narrative it carries is never original. The shift in press coverage is documentable by date, and it follows a pattern that any student of managed narratives should recognize immediately. The press did not discover the Strait of Hormuz. The strait became the story when it became the problem. And when it became the problem, it needed to be renamed so it did not raise the wrong questions. It says, let's examine the progression of coverage. Late January through February 27th, 2026, pre-strike, which is over 60 days ago, the dominant press frame was entirely nuclear. Trump's State of the Union on February 24th claimed that Iran had restarted its nuclear program and was developing missiles capable of striking the U.S. Trump and his administration officials, Vance, Rubio, and Witkoff, all accused Iran of building up its nuclear and missile programs to threaten the U.S. and its interests. The Strait of Hormuz was barely in the conversation. IMEC was not mentioned at all. The framing was the existential threat to American soil, nuclear warheads, ballistic missiles, regime terror. The secondary frame was humanitarian. In January 2026, Iranian security forces massacred thousands of civilians in their crackdown on the largest Iranian protest since 1979. Well, that's what we were told. I would just add that. We don't know for sure. Trump used this to build the moral case alongside the security case. The strait was, at this stage, a footnote in wonk publications, not front pages. So we got embedded video here as well. February 28th through March 10th, strike and immediate aftermath. So it goes on here. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but it's talking about how the strait actually became the target here. This is what this shift actually means. Nuclear justification served its purpose. It provided the moral and security rationale that American public opinion required. To accept military action, it was the entry ticket, but the nuclear program, once struck, is a past tense story. The Strait of Hormuz is a present tense story. It produces oil prices, food shortages, and economic pain that people feel directly today. What the press has never asked, and what remains entirely absent from U.S. coverage, is why permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz happens to be the precise strategic prerequisite for IMEC's Eastern Sea Lane to function as designed. Yeah. Removing Iran's ability to threaten Hormuz was not a side effect of the war. It was the architectural requirement. So they got to get full control of Hormuz, I guess. That's what it sounds like he's making the case for. And that may be. Could be. But last I heard, we are blockading their blockade with the blockade. So I don't really know if anything has changed or if anything will change. But they certainly do have control of it. All right. one more from technocracy.news. Thought this was weird. New robot ants work like real insects to build and dismantle on their own. Do we really need robot ants? The lowly ant, able to lift many times their own weight and able to build complex structures using signaling based on chemical signaling with pheromones. Rants, or robot ants, communicate through light fields known as photoremones and build and deconstruct complex structures. Maybe Elon Musk will use rant swarms to build space colonies on Mars. Well, maybe so. Anyway, I wanted to see what they look like and if they even look like ants, and it turns out they don't. Here, let's kind of zoom past some of this stuff. This is what they look like. So they don't even look like ants, but they kind of move like ants. And you can see the lights on them right there. Says ants prove that you don't need a big brain to be a great builder. All that is that kind of sums up Donald Trump, doesn't it? You don't need a big brain to be a great builder. All that is needed is a great team. Without blueprints or supervisors, these tiny creatures construct some of nature's most complex habitats. And now experts are taking this cue. In recent years, AI development has obsessed over faster chips and bigger digital brains. In this model, the smart systems are located inside the robot's hardware, rather the intelligence emerges from the interaction between the robot and its surroundings. I just thought that was kind of strange. But you can see they're building things here in this video. So I'll leave that one to you guys if you want to investigate the rants. Minnesota Public School builds dedicated Islamic prayer room and foot washing station for Muslims. What about the separation between church and state? Oh, wait, that's only for Christians, right? Public schools across America are no longer pretending to be neutral. In Osseo area schools, OSSEO area schools, just outside Minneapolis, officials are using taxpayer money to renovate Park Center Senior High School and Osseo Senior High School. The renovation plans explicitly include a dedicated, quote, prayer room and foot washing stations, features specifically designed for Islamic ritual ablution called wudu, W-U-D-U, before the 5 daily prayers. This is not a multi-faith space. It's an infrastructure built to accommodate one religion's demands in a public school funded by all taxpayers. Meanwhile, Christian students across the United States continue to face suspension, censorship, and outright bans for doing far less, praying silently, bringing a Bible to school, or trying to form a Christian club. In Texas, the contrast is particularly glaring at a Texas public school. 12-year-old Marcus and his friend and fellow student Leland exposed how the Muslim Students Association, an organization with documented ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, was allowed onto campus to distribute Islamic literature and hijabs to the students. The same school repeatedly blocked or heavily restricted Christian and Republican clubs. So there you go. There's your double standard. I thought that was completely insane. But yeah, it's, that was Texas that we were just talking about. But this with the foot baths and the prayer room has to do with Minnesota. So pretty interesting, huh? They are taking over. I still maintain that that will be the one world religion that we will all be subject to. That would be Islam, in my opinion. All right. So got a couple of airplane, I won't say mishaps. One was a complete crash. This one, people were hurt, but it wasn't crash, I guess. It says Swiss flight's engine fails, catches fire during takeoff in Delhi. 6 hurt. All the passengers were evacuated on the runway using emergency slides, adding that the Swiss flight was scheduled to fly to Zurich. New Delhi, 6 passengers on board a Swiss flight were injured after the aircraft aborted the takeoff run at Delhi Airport following an engine fire incident. So again, more airplane mishaps. All the passengers were evacuated on the runway using emergency slides. Flight number LX147, an Airbus A330, began to take off at 1:08 a.m. when one of the engines failed and a fire broke out. Shortly after takeoff, just after 1 a.m. local time India, an issue occurred that one of the engines, the crew rejected the takeoff, and following an assessment of the situation, decided as a precaution to evacuate the aircraft. So here's the video clips here. But yeah, engine fire. So the point is, it seems like these things are just nonstop. Which reminds me, I was shown by a family member earlier, I think a couple days ago, that there was an incident, was kind of played down, maybe at the local level it wasn't, but it was played down in the national news. So let me just do a quick search for this real quick while I'm thinking about this. BNA Nashville Airport, close call with 2 planes taking off. I think it was taking off. So there was an incident in Nashville here, which, again, I have family that flies all the time. Right here. Yeah, WSMV is a local Channel 4, which is NBC. So we're just kind of doing this story on the fly, just because I remembered as I was reading that about the Swiss airline here. Close call. Listen in on near miss between 2 Southwest planes Saturday near BNA. So this was yesterday. The 2 flights came dangerously close to colliding and not been for the TCAS system inside the planes. Nashville, Tennessee, two Southwest airline flights came within 500 feet of each other Saturday afternoon near Nashville International Airport after an air traffic controller error. An aborted landing led to 2 planes on a collision course. Southwest Flight 507 was attempting to land when pilots decided winds were too strong and began circling the airport for another attempt, according to the airline. At the same time, Southwest Flight 1152 was taking off. So you had 1 landing, 1 taking off. The air traffic controller directed Flight 507 on a path that brought it dangerously close to the departing flight. Yeah. I'm looking to see if they have the animation here. It was pretty telling. I don't really see that. The pilots used collision avoidance system. The pilots were able to see that they were too close to the traffic collision avoidance system, or TCAS. The FAA said only 500 feet separated both planes. With this kind of job, you have to be 100% perfect. Yeah, that's why you're called air traffic controllers. 100% of the time, which is impossible for humans. We are going to make mistakes. There's a saying that one of our former union presidents used to say that there's 2 types of controllers: those that have had errors, had deals, or errors, and those who are just waiting to have deals or errors. Because it's not a matter of if, it's when. They always say that. Anyways, all that to say, yeah, 500 feet. That's pretty darn close. All right. Well, anyway, I just wanted to bring that up just because that's something that I hadn't really heard about from really anywhere else. But that happened right here. Luckily, the planes missed each other, so that was good. So this is a weird one, too. This is highly ironic. It says, watch, Titanic Museum exhibit floods on the 114th anniversary of the ship's sinking. Well, there's water on the floor. I'm not sure how much water they had. Let's look at this and see what it says. Some stories are just too weird not to stop and stare at for a minute, and this is one of them. A Titanic Museum exhibit flooding would already be strange enough on its own, right? But flooding on the exact anniversary of the Titanic sinking, that's the kind of spooky little twist that makes people put down their coffee and say, okay, hold on, what? This happened in Illinois, and the exhibit officials swear this was not some publicity stunt. Because if this is really just one of those bizarre little real-life moments, then it is exactly the kind of oddball story that people love. Maybe it's a freak coincidence. Maybe it's one of those eerie little historical echoes that makes the Titanic sinking feel even stranger. Either way, the timing is wild, and the details only make it weirder. So here's the details. A Titanic Museum exhibit experienced a striking emergency on the anniversary of the day the ocean liner sank. The Volo Museum, located in the Chicago suburb of the same name, experienced a flood in its Titanic exhibit on Wednesday, April 15th, after thunderstorms passed through the area that night. The museum even shared a still photo on Facebook from security footage that showed water leaking into the exhibit while a maintenance worker addressed the issue. In fact, the museum noted that the flood occurred on the exact anniversary of the Titanic sinking 114 years ago. You can't even make this up. This is not staged, the museum wrote in the caption of its post. The incident marked the second time in 3 years that flooding occurred, according to the Volo Museum. The last time the museum flooded was the day the exhibit opened. This building has never had water, not a drop, the curator from the Volo Museum said. Once we put in a Titanic exhibit, it took on water twice. Jim Wojdyla, marketing director for the Volo Museum, described the incident as almost paranormal. The irony of the Titanic exhibit flooding is strange enough, but the fact that ours flooded on the exact anniversary of the Titanic sinking is even more ironic. So very strange. So here's the video clip of it. You see some little waves come in. This is a little bit longer clip, so I won't bother playing it, but it is here if you guys want to check this out. It's on Revolver. And we'll link to this in the Substack post. So yeah, very strange. Titanic Museum exhibit. So yeah, we've talked about the Titanic often on this show, and I personally think it wasn't the Titanic even that sank. It was a different ship, and we'll play that video at some other point. I don't have it queued up tonight, but it is an interesting one. I forget what the other ship is called at this point. Not the Enterprise, but something like that. Yeah, and it was all for insurance claims, essentially. So anyways, let's take a look at this one. This is the other plane incident that came up this week. A small plane crash near Minneapolis, Minnesota, killed North Dakota state lawmaker Liz Conmey, 67, and the pilot on Saturday. So this was yesterday. The FAA has confirmed that a Beechcraft BE-33 crashed shortly after departing Crystal Airport on Saturday. 2 people aboard. Liz Conmey, served her state and community with care and compassion. North Dakota Governor Kelly Armstrong said in a statement, "We are saddened by this tragic loss and offer our deepest condolences to her family, friends, and fellow legislators." Security camera footage circulated on social media purportedly shows the moment the plane crashed into a wooded area before blowing up into a blazing fireball, setting trees and grass alight. Conmey's North Dakota Democratic Nonpartisan League Party, an affiliate of the Democratic Party. So she was a Democrat, essentially. Well, I wonder what she was working on at the time. People really need to be investigating what she was working on. So you can see the fireball here. It's barely in the frame. But if we zoom back here, you can see the plane hitting. If you back it up just a little bit, I'm just kind of inching the playback forward. You can see it coming down right there in between the trees. It's coming down like nose first, and the wings are askew. See it right there? And then it hits. There's the tail behind that tree in the middle of the frame, top. So yeah, you can see it hit right there. And that's when it crashes and the fireball happens. So that's insane. Very sad. But yeah, it would be interesting. I think it would be interesting to know what she was working on. And, perhaps it was pilot error. Perhaps it was simply some sort of mechanical failure. I mean, those are the obvious things that it could be. But hopefully people will know what she was working on if there was anything, let's say, fairly interesting. So I came across this too on RT. This might be worth a watch if you don't know much at all about Chernobyl. If you're like me, you were most likely very young when this happened, and I want to watch this just to get some of the details. So yeah, it says Chernobyl survivors reveal what happened after nuclear disaster. Full documentary. So I'm not sure how long it is, but it is embedded here on this site on RT. The Chernobyl disaster remains one of the defining technological catastrophes of the 20th century. Its impact is felt to this day, with survivors still living with its consequences. The latest RT documentary called Chernobyl, A Lesson for Humanity, returns to the exclusion zone nearly 40 years later to hear from those who saw the aftermath up close. Liquidators, firefighters, doctors, scientists, archivists, and the people who worked in the evacuated territories. RT team has filmed through the Belarusian sector of the exclusion and resettlement zone. The Chernobyl plant lies just 7 kilometers from the border, and abandoned villages still bear the marks of the 1986 evacuation. The movie features eyewitnesses who worked in local command structures during the liquidation, a nurse who treated the first irradiated patients in Moscow, a Russian nuclear agency advisor who explains the reactor failure, and the heroes of the cleanup effort, veteran liquidators who were at the scene 40 years ago. Their accounts trace the disaster from its first confusion and evacuation of the city of Pripyat to the construction of the sarcophagus, the contamination of vast areas in Belarus and Ukraine, and the long-term medical and ecological consequences. So there it is. I thought that would be fairly interesting, and many of you guys might also find it interesting and probably haven't heard a lot of the information in this documentary, I'm guessing. So yeah, the 40th anniversary is coming up. 1986 is when it happened. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. Thought that was certainly worth a watch. Oh yeah, this is Nick Sordor on X, who's a pretty good independent journalist. Great news, says the SPLC Center could potentially be sued into the Stone Age by donors who they scammed. Sending the NGO into total liquidation, SPLC is circling the drain, and they're only the first to be exposed. More to come. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm hopeful, like Nick is, that something will happen and that people will be prosecuted here, but again, don't hold your breath, right? So here's a video about what's going on with the SPLC. So let's get a few more details.
Racism is down, people! Unless we get these hate crimes up, we are out of a job! No more matcha lattes! Is this getting through to you?
If there's not enough racism, what if we made racism?
That's it!
I just want to make sure I understand. You're alleging that the Southern Poverty Law Center was paying the leaders of KKK and other groups to continue their operations? Is that?
I'm not alleging it. The grand jury returned an indictment that says that. And so what the investigation found, according to the indictment that was returned today, is that they were paying. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is raising money, asking folks to give them money to dismantle racism. And over a very long period of time, they were using some of the money they raised from donors to pay to, they call them field, basically to informants, for information, for access, to just pay them for certain, to do certain things. And so, yes, that's exactly what the indictment charges.
I've been on there 32 years, and my wheelhouse has been the Southern Poverty Law Center and ADL running the KKK, the Aryan Nations, all of them. It's come out. They got caught in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s doing it. It is well documented.
It's the biggest grift in at least modern American history, cutting into the literal DNA of these United States. On April 21st, 2026, a federal grand jury in Montgomery, Alabama, hit the Southern Poverty Law Center with an 11-count indictment, 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of false statements to a federally insured bank, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit concealment money laundering.
They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the general laid out, include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, Unite to Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front.
One SPLC field source was even a member of the online leadership chat group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, making racist postings under SPLC supervision and helping coordinate transportation to the event. This is the very definition of a false flag setup on a massive scale. As this debacle unfolds, we're seeing the full picture of a vast conspiracy aimed at falsely labeling white men as the most violent racist threat to the country, a narrative that continues to drive the Democratic Party.
Close your eyes. Remember what you saw on television. Remember seeing those neo-Nazis and Klansmen and white supremacists coming out of fields with lighted torches. And remember what the president said when asked?
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
Their veins bulging.
He said specifically that he was condemning them.
He did not. He said he walked out and he said, let's get this straight. The veins bulging on their as they were screaming. Remember, just close your eyes and picture what it was. Their veins bulging. Their veins bulging. Nazi sympathizers carrying Nazi fags.
Veins bulging.
Now, in other times, Democrats and Republicans alike would rely on the Southern Poverty Law Center to help us keep track of the movements of violent white supremacy in the country. The Southern Poverty Law Center has been a vigilant voice in civil society against radical white nationalist violence and extremism, neo-Nazism, and other forces across the political spectrum that spread organized hate from any quarter. The president, however, wants to undermine civil society organizations and to reduce our ability to defend ourselves against the virus of racial violence.
Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
Racism is evil.
Damn it.
And those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as America.
Not to mention fudged nationwide arrest data that mislabeled black and brown suspects as white, and major cities conveniently stopping crime reporting to the FBI after Biden took office. For years, the SPLC sat on the safety teams of Facebook, old Twitter, and YouTube, directly advising on what content to demonetize, restrict, or nuke entirely. They choked out dissenting voices during the height of big tech censorship, manufactured Gamergate as male supremacy, labeled conservative Christians and parental rights groups as hate groups, and relentlessly targeted Alex Jones and InfoWars, which resulted in the Truth Organization being put under surveillance by the FBI.
Charlottesville was mainly a bunch of homosexual leftists dressing up like Nazis who'd all formerly worked for Obama or Hillary, part of their art club, and then they lured a bunch of reporters there and some real white supremacists so the police could stand down and collide them into the folks. I pointed out that some of the same leftist foundations are funding the white supremacists that are funding real white supremacists in Ukraine. I got sued for that, even though it's, they tried to say that I said some cameraman killed the girl. I didn't say that the cameraman killed them. I said it was all part of leftists coming out to come to this big event and hope there was some big crisis out of it to demonize the right in general and tie us to Nazis.
The SPLC branded Jones a top anti-government extremist, feeding tech giants the ammunition they needed to ban InfoWars across multiple platforms in 2018 and wipe out his reach overnight. 4 months before Charlie Kirk was murdered, the SPLC placed Turning Point USA on their hate map right next to the KKK and neo-Nazis. On top of it all, this so-called poverty nonprofit sits on a near billion-dollar war chest stashed in global tax havens. The SPLC is denying everything and crying political weaponization, but the black and white evidence is in the indictment. The American people deserve better than being played for suckers by professional fearmongers. The entire country should sue. John Bound reporting for InfoWars.
Yeah, pretty interesting subject there. I think that it's good news that SPLC is being held accountable to some degree, but we will see how far that goes. Once again, don't hold your breath, right? About all we can do is hope for the best. Living on hopium, as they say. Yeah, anyway, good John Bound report, I think. And I'll note that Clooney and his wife, who donated $1 million to the SPLC, have been completely silent in all of this. It's because they knew what the money was being used for. So yes, they're just coming up with their own racism in order to combat racism and grift, get money from people who are buying the lies that they're putting out there and their propaganda. So anyway, that was a Nick Sortor piece that started this whole process with the SPLC. So I wanted to bring that up and give a few more details on the SPLC situation. All right. Let's take a look at a few more articles from some various places that I've found I thought were worth mentioning. All right. I think we mentioned this last week, but no, there were no pictures. Wildfire torch over 50 homes in Georgia. So wildfires in Georgia. I think I did mention that last week. I don't remember if I mentioned it on the show or just to someone else, but says 2 wildfires in southern Georgia continued to grow on Thursday, where evacuation orders remained in force for hundreds of residents. The Pineland Road Fire in Clinch County, which began on April 18th, burned nearly 30,000 acres and was only 10% contained as of Wednesday. Update from Georgia Forestry Commission. So how about that? And then it says nearby Brantley County, another fire covering more than 4,000 acres was only 15% contained, spurred on by drought and wind. The blazes consumed more than 50 homes and threatened an estimated 1,000 more, according to the Forestry Commission. Firefighters were also battling 35 smaller fires. So the governor issued a 30-day emergency declaration for 91 southern counties, saying the wildfires had passed the state's 5-year average and continued to spread amid extreme drought conditions. So is it real dry where you guys are? I'm trying to think. We did get a little rain the other day, but it wasn't much of anything. It says, what about nearby states? Dozens of wildfires in northern Florida were also active on Thursday. More than 17,000 acres burned over the past week. So things are pretty dry. I've got another story here on the, let me jump to that one actually. We'll come back on my list here. We'll come back to where I left off, hopefully. And this is a similar story. Only Corpus Christi plans to declare a water emergency. What does that mean? City leaders intend to make unprecedented cuts to water use in September, but aren't sure exactly how, as schools and hospitals drill for water. So this is dated April 23rd, so just a couple days ago. One of Corpus Christi's emergency water wells discharges into the Nueces River on March 31st. The story was published in partnership with Texas Newsroom. No modern American city has ever run out of water, but chances are rising that Corpus Christi, Texas could be the first. Absent a biblical rainfall event, its reservoirs are on track to completely dry up by next year. That raises baffling questions for the future of Texas' 8th largest city and one of the nation's major petrochemical hubs. Sounds like weather warfare to me, huh? We have no precedent to follow. There is no manual. There is no video. Corpus Christi City Mayor Peter Zanoni told the city council in March, when local leaders first acknowledged that disaster could be imminent. This week, Zanoni announced that Corpus Christi will require 25% cuts on water usage across the board in September. So I guess it's coming. But a city council meeting on Tuesday, officials appeared deeply uncomfortable with exploring the details of how life in Corpus Christi might look under these conditions, and whether such ambitious conservation targets are even possible. Everybody's going to have to make sacrifices. The city of Corpus Christi doesn't just provide water to 500,000 residents in nearby towns. The rest of its water consumption, more than half of it, in fact, comes from the multi-billion-dollar chemical plants, refineries, and other industrial facilities operated by some of the biggest companies in the world. And those companies, including ExxonMobil, Valero, and Occidental, have not publicly explained how or if they will implement such steep water cuts this fall. Yeah, I doubt that they'll have to be part of that, do you? The corporations like that always get a pass, typically. I'm wondering if they're building some of these new data centers in this area. I don't know. I hadn't heard. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty crazy about what's going on in South Texas. Very, very South Texas. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that because the wildfires kind of brought that up. And this one we mentioned a little bit ago. Further details, you can chalk it up to at least one positive thing Pete Hegseth has done. He axed the mandatory flu shots for the military. U.S. military will no longer require soldiers to receive an annual influenza vaccine, according to a Monday memo signed by Hegseth. Trump administration is restoring soldiers' ability to exercise bodily autonomy and religious convictions. Yeah, but I wonder if it's only for the flu vaccine, because that's not really true if that's the case. If you have to take all the other vaccines too and just get to choose on the flu one, it's not really bodily autonomy, is it? If a soldier wants the flu vaccine, they're welcome to take it, but warfighters will no longer be forced to, he said. Yeah, which of course they do not work. They're always based on the previous year's flu bug, and it's too little too late, and even so, the technology itself doesn't work. It never has worked. It's always been a massive, massive fraud. That is via double X's in general. All right. Another one from same site, WNG.org, from the SIFT. Thought this one was interesting just from the biblical history standpoint. Museum of the Bible prepares to receive Dead Sea Scrolls Isaiah fragments. An ancient fragment of the book of Isaiah will go on display at the Museum of the Bible from May through September before returning to Israel to spend 5 years in a vault. The leather fragment is part of the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in the 1940s and 50s in the caves of Qumran in the West Bank, or what the Israeli government refers to as Judea. Yeah, Judea and Samaria. It contains portions of several chapters of Isaiah that dates back to sometime around the 1st century AD. The Isaiah fragment is part of the final stage of a Dead Sea Scrolls exhibit at the museum, according to Bobby Duke, the museum's chief curatorial officer. Duke described the scrolls as the greatest archaeological discovery of all time. Before the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, our best Hebrew manuscripts were from about 1000 AD. These all date back from the 2nd century BC to the 1st century AD, so it shaves off 1,000 years of manuscript transmission. The find also showed remarkable fidelity in the transmission of Scripture, with few major differences between the text of the scrolls and later versions of the books. Duke calls the exhibit a wonderful reset in the wake of the Museum of the Bible's 2020 conclusion that all 16 fragments in its personal Dead Sea Scrolls collection were fakes. A team of scholars found the pieces were modern forgeries, according to the museum's report. The museum finalized its contract with the Israeli Antiquities Authority, which we've talked about many times on this show, to display authentic Dead Sea Scrolls sometime between 2020 and 2024. So anyway, what will be on display? A new display will also include other Dead Sea Scrolls fragments. Yeah, so I'm wondering where this place even is. Museum of the Bible. Anyone know? I'll ask Goog, see what it says. Oh, it's in D.C. It's in Washington, D.C. Anyway, pretty wild. You know, we've got some other some other biblical finds that we're going to mention and talk about tonight. So stay tuned for that. All right, next story here is Slay News article. Yeah, so, and we'll play the video, probably at the last video tonight, talking about these missing scientists, dead and missing scientists. Nuclear insider warns crazy stuff behind dead and missing scientists. Former senior U.S. nuclear official is warning that federal investigations into a growing number of dead and missing scientists could uncover alarming new details as scrutiny intensifies over cases tied to sensitive aerospace and defense programs. According to reports, investigators are now examining a series of deaths and disappearances involving researchers connected to nuclear, space, and classified government work, raising fresh concerns about whether the cases are truly isolated. Former nuclear official signals troubling possibilities. Frank Rose, this guy, I guess, who served as deputy administrator of the National Nuclear Security Administration, NNSA, cautioned that deeper investigations could reveal unexpected findings. Crazy stuff happens all the time, he said. Every day, something went wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. He added, "It wouldn't surprise me if you look into each of these individual cases. There's probably something more once you dig into it." While he said he had not seen direct evidence linking the cases, his remarks underscore growing unease about the pattern emerging across multiple incidents. The NNSA confirmed it is aware of reports related to employees of our labs, plants, and sites that it is looking into the deaths, suicides, and disappearances of individuals tied to its operations. Foreign threat concerns a growing pattern. So yeah, that's something that, again, we'll touch on a bit more in the final video for tonight. We'll play that on the way out. The issue escalated after a sudden and suspicious death of Matthew James Sullivan, a former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer who was preparing to testify before Congress about alleged UFO-related programs. According to reports, Sullivan, 39, died on May 12, 2024, under circumstances that remain unclear. Initial reports describe the death as a suicide, but no official cause has been publicly confirmed. Rep. Eric Burleson from Missouri has raised concerns about the case, writing to Director Kash Patel. Oh, well, that'll sure fix things. He wrote, "The sudden and suspicious circumstances surrounding the death raise significant concerns about potential foul play and safety of other individuals involved in this matter. The lack of transparency surrounding Sullivan's death has become a focal point for lawmakers demanding answers." So they just don't know. They never know. So anyway, questions mount as cases remain unsolved. All right, now we've got several things here tonight that are semi-related, so you might have to put on your thinking caps a little bit on this. So this is just another article about the would-be assassin here. WHCD shooter. So White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter. His Blue Sky account reveals violent No Kings protesters, obsessive anti-Trump rants, violent gifts, J.D. Vance attacks, and pro-Ukraine obsession. He sounds like the perfect guy for the job, doesn't he? Whether it's staged or not, it still sounds like the perfect guy for the job. But of course, he was not successful, if you want to look at it in those terms. Or maybe he was. 31-year-old California man arrested after opening fire while charging a Secret Service checkpoint at the White House Correspondents' Association dinner on Saturday had a public Blue Sky account filled with aggressively anti-Trump rhetoric, criticism of Vance, strong support for Ukraine, and imagery implying violence. Yeah, but he has the right skin color, so that's all that really matters. Anyway, I'm looking to see if they said anything else about the No Kings protest. Allen's post repeatedly attacked Trump. He called the president a known traitor who ran his campaign on revenge, effed up the COVID response, and had known connections to a murderous you-know-what in the Kremlin, meaning Putin, of course. Responding to a discussion about Epstein files, he wrote, "From the Epstein files that have been released, it's public knowledge that he likely is basically a sociopathic mob boss." So this is, again, what the shooter said here. Yeah, so he's been out there saying what he's been saying about Trump. Looking to see if there was anything else about the no kings. It's mentioned in the headline here, but I don't see anything specific about that, although it could be here. Anyways, speaking of no kings and what that might mean, depending on which king you may like or not, British King Charles' U.S. state visit confirmed in the aftermath of the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So he's still coming. And I didn't really mention this in the last couple weeks, but I've known about this at least for a couple weeks. And hadn't really seen too many articles or anything about it. But it is interesting, isn't it? The potential soon-to-be biblical Antichrist is coming to Washington, despite the many issues in the troubled U.S.-UK alliance. Many people in the UK establishment have, for weeks, been suggesting that King Charles III should scrap his long-awaited state visit to the U.S. over their contempt for Donald J. Trump. These haters say Trump, and keep in mind we're reading this from the Gateway Pundit, which is super pro-Trump. These haters say Trump's frequent ridicule of the failing PM Keir Starmer and harsh criticism of the British lack of military preparedness should be grounds to cancel tomorrow's trip. So he's getting ready to come over here. And of course, in the last couple of days, Trump also slammed Charles's younger and estranged son Harry, who visited Ukraine and criticized the U.S. Yeah, but they'll be all nicey nice, I'm sure, when they meet. If you add to that the security issue of yesterday's shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the pressure for canceling the trip was considerable. So interesting here. It says Buckingham Palace has confirmed that Charles and Camilla's U.S. state visit will proceed as planned following another assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Security concerns of the royals' upcoming 4-day visit remain high. Security concerns over their visit remain high in the wake of Saturday's shooting. So something to keep an eye on, if you know what I mean. Not saying anything will happen to KC3. Most likely it won't. However, the timing is very interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Very, very interesting, I think. So, and then I've got some other KC3 updates here in a bit, but we'll get to that in a minute. I just think the whole timing of that trip and the shooting that just happened yesterday, and you know where I'm going with that. The scripture that could potentially be talking about what happens to the soon-to-be Antichrist. So we will see. We'll see what happens. Again, hopefully nothing, but it is something to watch out for sure. Wine Press, this, I think it's probably their most recent Substack post from yesterday. Palantir inks a deal with USDA to manage farmland and control America's agricultural data, taking over the nation's food supply, effectively. This is now the 27th U.S. department that has contracted Palantir. This data will eventually be tokenized and tracked on the blockchain ledgers and mitigated by AI. Food and farming becomes permissioned. See where we're going here? You cannot buy or sell unless you take the mark. I'm just adding that, but that's what it looks like. Defense contractor and data analytics company Palantir announced a partnership with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, making this the 27th official collaboration with an American department. So the U.S. government is getting in really heavy with Palantir. 27th official collaboration with Palantir, further deepening its ties and grip on the U.S. government. Despite no official announcement published yet on the USDA's website, Palantir disclosed the $300 million agreement in a press release on April 22nd. America depends on its farmers, and USDA is moving fast to give them the technology they need. They are raising the bar for what government can deliver for farmers, and we are honored to partner in that work. I'm sure they are. Protecting America's farmland is protecting America itself. It's always couched in that, isn't it? No, it's taking over America's farmland. The data for it, at least. This work gives USDA the visibility and speed needed to safeguard our food supply. So, you flip this, you do a 180 on this. You just flip this 180 degrees, and then you you see the truth. Gives the USDA the visibility and speed needed to safeguard our food supply. So it's not about that at all, essentially. It's about them being able to take over all of this. Everything that has to do with agriculture. Our farmers sustain this nation, and modern tools help us support them with greater precision. I look forward to working with Palantir as we continue serving the American farming community, which serves all of us every single day. Palantir Inc.'s $300 million deal with USDA to safeguard the food supply. There will be no safeguarding of the food supply, will there be? That is a headline there from CNBC. Anyway, that's not good. Well, here's listing the plan. It says the plan is sevenfold. Secure and protect American farmland, enhance agricultural supply chain resilience, protect U.S. nutrition safety net from fraud and foreign exploitation, defend agricultural research and innovation, put America first in every USDA program, safeguard plant and animal health, protect critical infrastructure. So it sounds like they're going to be embedded in all things that have to do with farming. That is definitely not good news. I think I've got some other somewhere here. Got some other Palantir information too, so we'll get to that in a minute. Well, actually, this is it, I think. Palantir Manifesto calls for U.S. to return to military draft. So this is on Leo Hohmann's Substack. AI-based defense contractor and creepy tech giant with clear interest in more wars also says, we must not be rude to our technocratic overlords. This is the CEO, Alex Karp, with the Kramer from Seinfeld hair. Only he's not nearly as funny. Palantir Technologies released a 22-point manifesto over the weekend. I'm surprised it's not 33 points. They're slacking here. 22-point manifesto over the weekend in which the tech giant and major defense contractor called for a return to the military draft, arguing that wars should be fought equally in an age where more and more bigger wars are likely to occur. Yeah, and that means that Gen Z people just have to be ready to die, essentially. Palantir's 22 points were billed as a summary of company co-founder Alex Karp's 320-page book called The Technological Republic. Karp, the billionaire Palantir CEO, co-authored the book with the company's head of corporate affairs, Nicholas Zimiska. Because we get asked a lot, the Technological Republic, in brief, the company posted on X, the ideas in the manifesto reflect Karp's bizarre belief that the tech industry has been insufficiently supportive of U.S. national security. One of the book's bombshells is the suggestion that the U.S. should reinstitute forced conscription of young Americans into the military. Quote, we should, as a society, seriously consider moving away from an all-volunteer force and only fight the next war if everyone shares in the risk and the cost. Bullet point number 6 of the summary reads, so your kids need to die for Alex Karp. That's what he's saying. Just as tech companies must be conscripted to serve national interests, so must individuals, Karp said, adding national service should be a universal duty. Yeah, but he gets a pass because he's a billionaire, and so does his whole family. Anyways, I'm just adding that, but that seems obvious. There's more here on this Leo Hohmann Substack posts about Palantir and their evil ways. All right, then here's one more post from Leo's Substack. Different article. Did Donald Trump request nuclear codes for a civilization-ending strike against Iran? Source of claim is not one who can be easily dismissed. President Trump was said by a former CIA analyst to have requested a nuclear code during a heated exchange in the White House meeting with top national security aides on the night of Saturday, April 18th. And 18 is 666. Just adding that. The original source of this report, Larry Johnson, this guy, appeared on a April 20 podcast hosted by former Fox News legal analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. You can watch the video below, which Johnson made the claim. Fast forward to 4:35. Let me start by saying this is a very serious allegation from a very serious person. Larry Johnson is not just any podcast schmuck whose claims can be summarily dismissed or ignored. He is former CIA analyst who later served as deputy director of the U.S. State Department's Office of Counterterrorism from 89 to 93. 2 days after the fact, Johnson's claim is still being talked about and passed around online. When a bombshell story in deep state doesn't want out goes viral like that, a legacy media outlet can always be counted on to run an article saying it was baseless and false. Nothing to see here. Move along. Yeah, which says Inter Newsweek. It posted a nearly 600-word article on April 21st, which it quoted a, quote, White House spokesperson saying Johnson's claim was false. Yeah, they had to play that down right away. I'm looking to see if the specifics here are mentioned in this article. Remember, we are dealing with a president who just 2 weeks ago threatened to end an entire civilization, a threat that many took as a reference to nuclear annihilation. The same president's mental capabilities have been widely called into question in recent days since that statement and other bizarre statements that have come from Trump's mouth and his keyboard. I would say in his phone. There was also a mainstream media report last week from the generally pro-Trump Wall Street Journal that Trump had to be physically removed from the White House Situation Room during the downed pilot rescue mission over Iran on Good Friday. He screamed at aides for hours and then was kept out of the room while his team was given minute-by-minute updates. Does this sound like a man who would hesitate to order a civilization-ending nuclear attack on a country and people that have frustrated his efforts to conquer them at every turn? Yeah, that's a good question. Anyway, that is some of this Leo Hohmann Substack post. Pretty interesting. Very concerning. And I do think that if we see some sort of nuclear exchange, it might be Trump that is involved in that decision. If so, it would be at the behest of Bibi Netanyahu, I think, personally. But we'll see. Hopefully that won't happen, but it seems like we are definitely in that time zone where it could happen at any point. And they have the war that they've been wanting all these years. Insight to Insight on Substack, another good one. Israel's war on Christians in the Middle East and why evangelicals don't care. The photo of smashing the Garden Jesus statue opened the eyes of a lot of people, and then they closed them again. So there you go. Israel's war on Christians. They just don't care. There's a photograph circulating this week that an IDF soldier caving in the face of a Jesus statue with a mallet in looked like a sledgehammer, in a Lebanese Christian village. Israel turned to rubble. Evangelicals claim the outrage was overblown because it's just an image. As though the entire point isn't the living, breathing images of God systemically terrorized by Israel watching through the windows as soldiers commit war crimes on their back lawn. Yeah, that's a good point. Anyway, this is a full article and also a podcast. There's the embedded podcast right here. Israel's war on Christians in the Middle East and why evangelicals don't care. We'll link to this in my Substack post, but it's another good one. All right, so back to Charles for just a minute. A few more articles that I found somewhat interesting. Again, his visit is coming very soon. Says King Charles' state visit kicks off with wrong flag hung near the White House. This is from International Business Times, which is a UK publication. A flag mix-up in Washington, D.C. briefly saw Australian flags instead of the Union Jack ahead of King Charles's state visit. Washington was supposed to roll out the red carpet for King Charles III. Instead, it briefly hoisted the wrong country's flag. Oops. Photos circulating on X on Friday showed Australian flags, not the Union Jack, lining the 17th Street near the Eisenhower Executive Office Building just days before the King and Queen are due to arrive at the American capital. The flags had been put up by public work crews preparing the city for the first state visit by a British monarch since May 2007, when Queen Elizabeth II was hosted by W. Bush. The blunder was quickly spotted by passers-by, with photos spreading rapidly across X within hours of appearing. They put the wrong flags up. They don't even know what the correct flags are. Oops. Department of Transportation official moved in fast to contain it. We posted those flags, but it was quickly rectified. They should have just left them up and said, oh, well, the leaders from Australia are coming too, so we better honor them too. Not quite an insult to the crown. The error sparked plenty of mockery online, though some pointed out that it was not entirely without logic. King Charles also serves as the constitutional head of the state of Australia. Well, that's a good point. Meaning the flags were still, in a sense, flying in his honor. That technicality did little to spare Washington from the jokes. They couldn't bother to take 15 seconds and Google UK flag, ? One user wrote on X, another quipped, I blame George Bush and No Child Left Behind. While a third offered some relief writing, glad they fixed it before the king arrives. Yeah, that is true. Australia is a Commonwealth nation under King Charles III. Something that we've mentioned on this show many times. All right, and then this one is a additional article. Same site, IBT Times. Will King Charles cancel his U.S. visit after the Trump dinner shooting? Security protocols explained. So again, we've already kind of addressed this. They've already said no, they're going through with the trip, but this is, I guess, more from the UK perspective. Security concerns rise as Charles's U.S. visit coincides with the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Again, very interesting timing, isn't it? Charles's planned U.S. state visit has come under fresh scrutiny as a suspected gunman opened fire at the White House Correspondents' Association dinner in D.C. last night, forcing Trump and senior members of his administration to evacuate just days before the king and queen are due to arrive. There is no confirmation that Charles will cancel the trip, but ministers say security arrangements are being taken very seriously. Imagine if something happens to Charles on Trump's watch. But then Charles ends up being just fine. Wonder what would happen. So this is an actual news release from something called PR Newswire. President Trump to read scripture, which this has already happened, during America Reads the Bible, issues historic message about the Bible's enduring guidance. So this is something that happened a few days ago. Reading 2 Chronicles 7:11 through 22, the president joins nearly 500 leaders in a week-long Bible event honoring America's 250th, live-streamed on Great American Pure Flix. Washington, April 17th, Trump has issued a presidential message recognizing America Reads the Bible, a historic, which I wish that were true, but unfortunately that's not really true, huh? A historic initiative in which almost 500 Americans will partake in the public reading of Scripture, commemorating 250 years of the Bible in America. In every generation, through every trial and triumph, God's Word has guided our people and our country to new heights, states the presidential message released by the White House on the eve of the America Reads the Bible. Presidential message highlighting the Bible's extraordinary impact on American history, including references to Columbus, John Winthrop, and the Declaration of Independence, the 1787 Northwest Ordinance, and President John Adams will help catalyze the gathering of nearly 500 leaders in 122 ministries in Washington, D.C. for America Reads the Bible. So this is really just a press release going on about this. So what is that scripture exactly? Let's look it up, shall we? I think you'll find it interesting. Yeah, in 2 Chronicles 7:11 through 22, God responds to Solomon's dedication of the temple, promising to hear prayers and heal the land if his people repent, while warning that disobedience will lead to the temple's destruction and exile. Now, why would Trump or whoever pick a part of Scripture talking about the temple? Why would that happen? Do you suppose Trump himself picked this? I sort of doubt that. I think that it was picked for him, but I wonder why and by who. Israel, you suppose? God affirms that he has consecrated the temple and vows to establish Solomon's throne if he remains faithful. Let's read the actual, that was just the summary here. Let's read the actual Scripture and see what it says. So 2 Chronicles 7, 11 through 22. So it's from here down to here. Okay. So I'm going to read this. So bear with me, but I do find this highly interesting, especially, again, looking at the timing, and you've got literally what seems to be King Charles and the Queen on the plane heading here. And he will be the biblical Antichrist very soon, at least in my opinion and many others. Thus Solomon finished the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all that came into Solomon's heart to make in the house of the Lord, and in his own house he prosperously effected. And the Lord appeared to Solomon by night and said unto him, I have heard thy prayer and have chosen this place to myself for a house of sacrifice. If I shut up heaven and there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Now mine eyes shall be open and mine ears attent unto the prayer that is made in this place. For now have I chosen and sanctified this house, that my name may be there forever, and mine eyes and mine heart shall be there perpetually. And as for thee, if thou wilt walk before me as David thy father walked, and do according to all that I have commanded thee, and shalt observe my statutes and my judgments, then I will establish thy throne of thy kingdom, the throne of thy kingdom, according as I have covenanted with David thy father, saying, there shall not fail thee a man to be ruler in Israel. But if ye turn away and forsake my statutes and my commandments, which I have set before you, and shall go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will pluck them up by the roots out of my land, which I have given them. And this house which I have sanctified for my name, will I cast out of my sight, and will make it to be a proverb and a byword among all nations. And this house which is high shall be an astonishment to every one that passeth by it, so that he shall say, why hath the Lord done thus unto this land and unto this house? And it shall be answered, because they forsook their Lord God of their fathers, which brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on other gods, and worshipped them, and served them. Therefore hath he brought all this evil upon them. So that is what Trump read. Isn't that interesting? All about the temple. Why would he be told, again, he wouldn't have chosen that scripture, but why would he be told to read about the temple? Makes one wonder. So, again, about Charles, this is something we've mentioned before quite a while back now, but it says, is King Charles still in cancer treatment in 2026? Here is why he's happier than ever. So apparently Charles has been healed of cancer, at least to some degree. It says, even under the shadow of cancer, King Charles appears determined to let his workload, rather than his diagnosis, define his reign. Charles is still receiving cancer treatment in 2026, but is the happiest he's ever been in his role as monarch, according to a leading royal biographer who has watched his first years on the throne at close quarters. For context, Buckingham Palace announced in early 2024 that Charles had been diagnosed with an unspecified form of cancer following treatment for a benign enlarged prostate. the palace confirmed at the time that the disease was caught during those tests, but did not disclose the type or stage of cancer, and it has not issued any detailed medical updates since. What it did was say that the king would step back temporarily from public-facing duties while continuing with state business and his red boxes behind the scenes. That pause turned out to be brief. Within months, Charles was back on the road, cutting ribbons, unveiling plaques, and inspecting parades, apparently determined to show that his reign would not be defined solely by his health. Those close to him now say that the king has moved to a new phase, managing ongoing treatment while leaning harder than ever into the work that he spent decades preparing for. Yes, decades. He's secretly been running the world behind the scenes since 1969. Since his investiture when he was made the Prince Charles, Prince of Wales. Royal biographer Robert Hardman, speaking to a magazine called Marie Claire, painted a portrait of a man not ground down by illness, but energized by finally doing the job that has loomed over his entire adult life. Yeah, so all that to say, he seems like he's not really affected by cancer, which does make one wonder. And then speaking of cancer, what's up with this? Netanyahu's secret health battle. Israeli Prime Minister reveals he underwent prostate cancer treatment and kept it quiet to avoid Iran using it against him. So what's going on with that? Sounds like the same thing, basically. And yet, he got treated, and he still has all his hair. Everything still seems to be normal, unless it's a double. Netanyahu has revealed he underwent treatment for prostate cancer. Radar Online can report dropping the bombshell by showing off the results of his annual medical examination. The 76-year-old explained he delayed the release of his annual medical report, which noted he had been diagnosed with cancer by 2 months, so that Iran wouldn't use it as propaganda, especially during the height of the U.S. and Israeli military operations against Iran earlier this year. And right now, actually. Yes, Netanyahu's message, thank God it's behind me. Yeah, no pun intended, I guess. But, yes, the death rumors have been flying, and not because of that, though, but because supposedly he may have been in a location, I think it was his house, that got bombed, and then he disappeared for a while. And we talked about all that when it happened. Turns out he had cancer, though, and yet now he doesn't, and he looks the same, doesn't seem to be affected. So what sort of specialized treatments do you suppose he's getting? If it's even true, or is it a double? Do we know? Can we possibly know? Seems to me like probably not. Anyways, I don't know. I just think that whole thing's really strange. All right, let me close out of these. All right, so several things on this site I wanted to mention just very briefly. dailycrow.com if you want to follow along. Kash Patel's stunning reaction as shooter opened fire in White House Correspondents' Dinner. You can see he's very, well, it's a blurry picture, but he's very wide-eyed here when he grabs his phone. Not sure that really matters, but some of these other things are kind of interesting. It says an account made in December 2023 has only ever made one post on Twitter, and it happened to be in the shooter's name, Cole Allen. The post was made in the winter solstice, and I guess this is it here. Going back on the time machine, here it is. Cole Allen, it's labeled Henry Martinez, but Cole Allen was his name. December 21st, 2023. They used the time machine to go back and look at it. It had 0 followers, and now it has 862. So here's some of the screenshots. Joined December 2023, 0 followers. But now you can see he's got 862, so people figured out it was him, I guess. Now, this has been making the rounds, I guess. Shooter Cole Allen seen here in an Instagram post wearing an IDF sweatshirt before his profile was removed. And yes, it does look the same, but this has been determined to be AI. So don't believe this one. And it does kind of look like an AI photo, if you ask me, although it's getting harder and harder to tell for sure. Says, yet again, the name was Googled in Israel 3 months prior to the event. So, yes, as we've talked about before on the show, Cole Thomas Allen was Googled on February 20th from Israel. Is that a coincidence? Well, that's probably true, but I don't think this is true. It says, wow, what a coincidence. That Cole Allen participated in NASA Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship at the JPL. Was he also in a BlackRock commercial? That's a good question. Yeah, this is from his LinkedIn here. He participated in the Summer Undergraduate Research at the JPL in Pasadena. So that's very interesting, huh? We know about all of the occult ties JPL has to NASA and so forth. So here's a photo of him. Yeah, and then here he is kissing the carpet. Let's see. Okay, here is the guy. This is the guy that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. This is a mentalist named Oz Perlman. From, let's just say, the little country over there in the Middle East that causes so much havoc. Anyway, that is this guy. And he is identifying who, again, her baby is about to be born. And I don't think it's widely known what the baby's name is going to be. And he wrote it on this card. It's written on this card. And shows her. And then Melania sitting right there. And they're both totally surprised and shocked. So he's kind of like a magician. He's called a mentalist, an entertainer. See, and Trump's looking on, doesn't seem to care, and then she's sort of paying attention. It says right before Trump is rushed off stage, a man holds up a card. 1 second later, Melania reacts with an expression of horror on her. I think she's just surprised, and then she hears the gunshots or whatever ring out. He's still looking toward her. It's funny. Well, anyways, I don't think that there's really all that much importance in that, but whatever you guys want to investigate. Yeah, Erica Kirk was there, which is pretty interesting. And then she runs out screaming or crying, I guess. Runs out of the room crying after it's all said and done. She's in shock, from trauma. Okay, and then what else we have? Did he fall asleep again? Trump's latest Oval Office event sparks concerns. So this is on NJ.com. I didn't really pull up the article, but it is here. It looks like he's sound asleep when this guy's talking. I've heard that Trump, he gets roughly 2 hours of sleep a night. And so it's no wonder that the guy is making so many terrible decisions and effectively not making sense from moment to moment. If he's only getting 2 hours of sleep and he's like almost 80 years old, not a good combination, if you ask me. Not to give him a pass, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that could be contributing factor to what all's going on. I mean, you can see he's sound asleep while this guy's talking, so he must be really boring. Okay, and then, yeah, this is a good example of, we mentioned this at the very beginning of the show tonight. You have the 14-year-old who looks far older than that, body slamming this 15-year-old girl to the ground and stomping on her head. And then this says, zero coverage for over 24 hours from any media outlet. Eventually, New York Post chimed in after social media called out every outlet. You can imagine the outrage if the roles were reversed, yet we have come to accept this madness by the thousands daily around the country. If Kyle had stomped Shaniqua, just imagine. So here's Kyle stomping Shaniqua, which of course didn't happen. But imagine if it did, what we'd be hearing about now. It would be nonstop, wall to wall. This story would be absolutely everywhere. And it would have completely sidetracked the whole White House correspondents' dinner thing. So that's a good point. This meme here, or picture, pretty much says it all. This is what I wanted to mention. The largest Pride festival in the history of the Middle East is to be held at the location where Sodom was destroyed. The exact location is debated, but the probability that this is it just went close to 100. There's nothing new under the sun. And this is where they're showing in this map. Note the shape of the map in the circle here. I don't think that's an accident either. Dead Sea region, long associated with Sodom. And then here's a AI picture here made. Largest Pride Festival in the Middle East is coming. I don't know when this is going to be, but if it's I don't know. It probably says here somewhere. So that is pretty interesting where it's about to be. And this is what I wanted to mention was, yet again, Ron Wyatt is completely ignored. He discovered Sodom and Gomorrah, where that location is. And I've stopped it here on this video. This is it. So this is, hopefully you guys can see this. It's way down here. Here's Sodom, here's Gomorrah on this map. And you can see that here, they've got it up here. So I don't know that it's exactly where they're saying it is. They have it further north than what Ron Wyatt said. According to this map, it's completely down at the bottom of this part of the Dead Sea. What they're calling the South Basin. It's down here. But Sodom is about, what, a third of the way up. And Gomorrah is close to that. So I'd say that it is in the range, according to this. But this is right from RonWyatt.com. Sodom and Gomorrah. Ron Wyatt's discovery of Sodom, Gomorrah, and the cities of the Plain, 1989. So this has been known for a long time. After passing some odd-colored formations that he had passed before 30 to 40 times, Ron Wyatt was impressed to stop and closely examine them. What he discovered was the most visible, accessible authentication of the literal Word of God ever found. These ashen structural remains were saturated with encapsulated sulfur balls or leftover fire and brimstone from heaven. The Sphinx, the ziggurat, right angles, and wall shapes complete with ramparts became visible even to the untrained eye. So again, the actual Sodom, according to what Ron Wyatt discovered, is at the very, very bottom of this area. Gomorrah is up a bit north of there, and where this is going to be is even further north. But it is in the general vicinity. They are really close. If this scale is right, then it's about probably 30 miles off, according to what I'm seeing here. So let's look at some of these pictures. Hopefully you guys can see this. So these are some of the pictures on RonWyatt.com. And to get, that definitely looks like a building structure of some sort. Those are the sulfur balls. And they had them analyzed. That is indeed what it is. That's what makes up those structures. So anyway, these are, I don't know, probably still shots from video, some of them. So some of them might look a little fuzzy because they're video from a while back. 89 is when it was discovered, so it was probably right after that. So again, sulfur ball. So you can see that these structures look like something that were built. But they are completely annihilated, and note they are completely covered. So yeah, there's a lot of pictures here, so I won't go through them all, but there are a bunch here, and this website has been rebuilt, and they have a lot of really good information on it that wasn't here before. Yeah, Deuteronomy 29:23, warning to Sodom and Gomorrah. And that the whole land thereof is brimstone and salt and burning, that it is not sown, nor beareth, nor any grass soweth therein, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in his anger and in his wrath. So guess what? They're getting ready to have a Pride Festival in basically the same area. Isn't that just lovely? Somehow it's very fitting. You suppose God will do it again? I don't know. Anyways, that is some crazy stuff. I just came across that and thought I would point out the whole deal with Ron Wyatt's discovery. All right, let's keep moving here. Got a few more articles to go through. Daily Caller, I thought this was interesting. For folks in Tennessee, of which I am one, fear that's long haunted gun owners could be erased in Tennessee. So this is pretty interesting. It says the Tennessee state legislature passed a bill on Thursday that would expand the right to use deadly force to include property protection, easing a fear long held by gun owners. The legislation, which would allow citizens to use deadly force to prevent arson, burglary, animal cruelty, and robbery in certain situations, passed on party line votes in the Republican-dominated Tennessee House of Representatives and Tennessee State Senate. Supporters of the legislation argued that law-abiding citizens should be allowed to protect their life's work. Nashville area TV station WKRN reported. Right now, under current law, if someone is breaking into your property, if they're stealing from you, if they're destroying what you'd worked your entire life to build, you're expected to wait, Republican State Rep Kip Capley said during debate on the measure. You're expected to hesitate. You're expected to second guess and take a calculated risk at defending what's yours. In most states, the use of deadly force in self-defense is only permissible in situations where a person has reasonable fear, quote unquote, of being the victim of a violent crime, according to criminaldefenselawyer.com. Under traditional self-defense laws, the act of brandishing or firing a gun is evaluated like any other use of force. The main question is whether using a gun was reasonably necessary and proportional to an imminent threat of unlawful force, the site says. For instance, when an attacker raises a fist or throws a punch, the victim can't just pull a gun and shoot. A gunshot in these circumstances would normally be more force than necessary for self-protection from non-deadly force. Before using deadly force, a victim must reasonably fear deadly force, which most states define as the threat of being gravely injured or killed or subject to a violent felony like rape, kidnapping, or robbery, the site states. The United States Concealed Carry Association said that they would advise their members in the state about what the legislation would mean. The USCCA, United States Concealed Carry Association, believes law-abiding Americans have the right to protect themselves and their families and their homes. Anyways, it says Tennessee's legislature has spoken on this issue and will make sure that our members understand what it means. So, very interesting, huh? Republican Governor Bill Lee did not immediately respond to requests for comment about his position on the bill, which is headed to his desk. My guess is he will sign it. He's been pretty good about stuff like that. He's been not so good about some other things, but I think he probably will sign that. So yeah, it says Pearson and Jones were expelled from the legislature briefly in 2023 after the Tennessee state capitol was stormed by anti-Second Amendment protesters days after the Audrey Hale, 28-year-old female who was identified as transgender, killed 3 children and 3 adults at Covenant School in Nashville before being engaged and fatally wounded by law enforcement. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. If I hear more, I will certainly bring that to your attention. But that's on Daily Caller. This is another one of those crazy things that has already been discovered, but they're acting like it's brand new. And they're just now finding this out. Again, Ron Wyatt goes way back. If you go here to Discoveries, Noah's Ark, his extensive research in the 1970s revealed evidence of decayed rib timbers, fossilized wood, organized iron lines, and compartments that suggested the structure was a large ship rather than a natural geological formation. 1970s. Ron Wyatt definitively proved that structure found. Let me see if there's a photo of it right here. That structure that was found down the hill a bit from Mount Ararat, or essentially around Mount Ararat in Turkey, is indeed Noah's Ark. There's nothing else it could be. Well, Daily Mail and other news outlets are reporting, gee, guess what? There's a Noah's Ark mystery that deepens as underground tunnels found in Turkey Mountain that match the Bible blueprint. So they're acting like this is brand new information. No one's ever come up with this before, when in fact it's been known since the 1970s. High in the mountains of Turkey, a mysterious geological formation sits that some researchers believe could be the remains of Noah's Ark. According to the Bible, the massive vessel that saved humanity and every kind of animal from annihilation during the catastrophic flood more than 4,300 years ago. Now a team of American researchers working at the Duru Pinar Formation near Mount Ararat has uncovered evidence of hidden tunnels as described in the biblical account. So this is, I guess, a little different. It's talking about tunnels. Andrew Jones, independent researcher for Noah's Ark scans. You could follow them on Facebook, by the way. I've been following that page off and on. Used ground-penetrating radar to uncover a network of corridors converging on a hollow central chamber he dubbed the atrium. Andrew Jones linked the discovery to the Bible's description of the ark, which states the boat contained 3 internal levels built to shelter Noah, his family, and the pairs of animals. So anyway, it goes on. There's a more recent picture of the formation, but that is what was formerly Noah's Ark. Again, it's been known about, it's been found. This is further research on the site. But yeah, that's it. And again, discovered by Ron Wyatt and company, not by this guy. Not to take away from what he's doing, he's definitely finding out more information. And I think this guy actually talks about the fact that that Ron Wyatt did the initial work. I think he talks about it. It's just that this Daily Mail article makes it sound like, oh, they're just now figuring it out, which isn't exactly true. All right, this one from Natural News I pulled up because I thought it was going to say I thought this article was going to be about Iran taking out the radar installations, the billion-dollar radar installations, and then all of a sudden after they did that, they are no longer in drought, but they have rain now. And I talked at length with Mr. Dane about this yesterday. And he said, no, that's totally bogus and totally not true. Based on the fact that the drought in Iran is ongoing. It is weather warfare. They've been complaining about it, even on the floor of the UN, for decades, and it has not ended. So he said they have looked at the rain maps and precipitation maps and things like that in Iran, and can conclude that this rain that is being reported on, fallen now that those radar installations were taken out, is simply not true. So I thought that's what this article that I found on Natural News was about, but this is actually a broader story on weather modification and in the area and how it's being used, but it's not really about the radar installations. So it says analysis of claims regarding weather modification and resource control as geopolitical tools. Seizure of Iranian vessel highlights broader resource tensions. The United States seized an Iranian-flagged cargo ship on April 20th. Iranian officials have condemned the action as theft. This incident occurs against a backdrop of reported fuel crisis that's impacting global travel, with airlines announcing cost increases and route reductions. These events have drawn attention to broader claims that some analysts from some analysts that resource scarcity and environmental manipulation are being used as tools for geopolitical control. These perspectives, often presented in independent media, frame recent disruptions in interconnected elements of a strategic effort to manage populations and economies, a premise that is rejected by mainstream official sources. Of course it is. Historical context and official statements on weather modification. So this goes back to something Dane talks about a lot with the extended monsoon season in the Vietnam War and so forth, Project Popeye. So we know this is true as far as weather modifications being used. These climate programs are real. And it says, independent researchers argue that current geoengineering operations involve spraying toxic aerosols into the atmosphere, citing lab tests that show the presence of heavy metals like aluminum, lead, and mercury in rainwater and soil. They contend that these practices with roots in Cold War programs are a covert militarized operation masquerading as climate intervention. Engineered scarcity, the fuel crisis, and the airline industry response. So that's the next section here. I was looking for anything about the rain coming back to Iran after they took out these radar installations, and that is not what this story's about. So all that to say, from what I can tell, none of that is true. And that's been widely reported by some pretty major news outlets out there, that the rain is falling again in Iran, and apparently that's not true. So anyway, I just wanted to bring your attention to that InfoWars article, and I would just point out briefly here that InfoWars is going to be no more starting this coming week. They are scheduled to go offline and make the transition on April 30th, which is Thursday. So InfoWars, if you hate InfoWars, then I would say that your wish that they would completely go away is not going to happen. However, the InfoWars name is being taken over, it appears, by the pedo-friendly media company known as The Onion. And it's looking like they are going to get the rights to the URL, Infowars.com. So we'll all find out this coming week, starting on Thursday. But they're scheduled to make the transition to AJN Live, which is Alex Jones Network Live, starting on May 1st, which is Friday. So that will be an interesting process, and hopefully the transition will go smoothly for those folks. And there's a lot of people that are employed there. But this article is probably the last one that I will bother reporting on from this show, because it won't be Infowars.com anymore. They're going to try and take this URL and basically ruin Alex's reputation and make it into something he wasn't, essentially wearing his skin. And that is wrong. Even if you don't agree with what the guy says at all, you can dislike the guy, but stopping him from being able to talk and trying to denigrate him and take over his identity is completely wrong. And apparently that's what they're going to be trying to do. So this article is saying, take a trip down the rabbit hole. Internet flooded with bizarre information and theories about White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting. So yeah, this is, we kind of alluded to a little bit of this at the beginning of the show tonight. Following Saturday night's failed assassination attempt on Trump, suspicious political enthusiasts examined every angle of the incident and dove deep into the background of the shooting suspect, 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen. Some of the information revealed raises eyebrows, while some viral posts online have already been debunked. Which one of those was the fact that he was wearing the IDF shirt and stuff? None of that's true. Alex posted a pair of videos addressing rumors that the shooting was staged, despite the fact that it reportedly resulted in a Secret Service agent and Allen both being struck by gunfire, and that the suspect was a registered Democrat Trump hater. That's been pretty much proven at this point, looking back at social media posts from him. Jones clearly stated that he does not currently believe that the event was inauthentic, but several deranged Trump sycophants attacked him for even discussing the internet's theories. So then embedded videos here. I do not think the shooting last night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner was staged. So yeah, you have people jumping all over him for that. Anyway, and then Laura Loomer jumping into the equation, which that's never good. Below, viewers will find the most widely discussed oddities surrounding the shooting. This is not an endorsement of the theories, but simply a documented account of what is being discussed by those investigating the matter. So, and then some of this is what we touched on earlier. So there's quite a bit here on this InfoWars article. We'll link to this in the Substack post, but know that this link might not work after Thursday when The Onion takes over. So we shall see. Yeah, I was just thinking, I've got various bumper stickers on my car some of them say Infowars.com. I'm probably going to have to remove them because I don't want people seeing the bumper sticker, going to Infowars.com and finding some like pedo site or something. I don't know what they're going to do with the website. No one seems to know, including them, the Onion people. They don't know either. But they do have somebody that's supposed to be taking over the role of wearing Alex's skin, and which is that's an expression that he's been saying, and effectively trying to discredit anything and everything Infowars has ever done. So that's what they're mainly going to be focused on. Here's what we know about the California teacher charged with trying to shoot up the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Yes, he was a he/him, in case you missed that before. New acting AG Todd Blanche tells Fox News that it appears the WHCD attack suspect Cole Allen traveled from L.A. to D.C. via train, and he passed through Chicago on the way. Suspects believed to have booked a room at the Hilton in early April. Law enforcement officials tell me he's declining to answer questions, but allegedly made some specific reference to targeting administration officials. The assassin being a Caltech grad is insane. So more and more information coming out here about this guy. So again, if you're interested in further info about the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting, it's all there. That's on Not the B, actually. It's where that one is. VaccineImpact.com. I think I'll just go over this briefly. Declaring the truth, that is why I'm suffering these things. Fan into flame the gift of God which is in you. 2 Timothy 1:6. And of this gospel I was appointed a herald and an apostle and a teacher. That is why I'm suffering these things. 2 Timothy 1:11-12. Paul's second letter to his young disciple Timothy, which is recorded in the New Testament portion of the Bible, was written while Paul was sitting in prison in the city of Rome. Paul had been originally arrested in Jerusalem due to the attacks of the satanic Jews who tried very hard to kill him. This story is written in the last chapters of the book of Acts. Paul used his Roman citizenship to appeal to Caesar, the king of the Roman Empire, to have his case moved out of Jerusalem and its jurisdiction in Caesarea, where he was kept locked up, to the city of Rome. Paul endured tremendous opposition and attacks by the satanic Jews who opposed the gospel message, which declares that Jesus Christ is the Jewish Messiah and rightful King of Israel, and that the salvation of one's soul was now available to every single person living on the planet, regardless of group affiliations, such as citizenship, ethnicity, and race, gender, and any other way of classifying human beings into groups. Paul's life was an example of the principle that believing the truth makes one an outcast in Satan's world system, but publicly proclaiming that truth to others makes one a target of Satan, who will do everything he can to destroy and silence you. And then this is what he wrote to Timothy. So anyway, there's a little bit more here on this article if you want to take a look at that. I thought that was kind of interesting, and they often do some biblical New Testament type of posts on vaccineimpact.com. All right, GeoWatch, GAN, Global Alert News. Severe storm threat unfolding that will slam over 21 million Americans with monster hail, strong winds, and possible tornadoes. That's a Fox Weather headline. Almost 50 million Americans on alert for severe weather outbreak in plains in the Midwest. Secretive Bilderberg Group just met, but who knows what the global elite said? That's a Guardian headline. And then Dane is asking, question, were the global elite addressing weather warfare, crop failures, and the coming collapse? We are now all in completely uncharted territory. That we are. Anyway, that is the latest Global Alert News broadcast, and there's also another one. There was a second one this week called Dying of the Trees. So here it is, Dying of the Trees, 90-second alert. So he does do these short little 90-second videos. If you guys ever want to check those out, they usually say in the headline of the article, 90-second alert. Dying of the trees, are we next? The highly toxic fallout from the ongoing geoengineering programs is devastating forests along with the entire web of life on our once thriving world. Do you object? So yeah, that's a pretty cool little clip there with Dane out in the outback forest and showing all the dead trees and stuff. Is pretty amazing. So feel free to take a look at that. That is on geoengineeringwatch.org. Make sure you're on our email list if you're not already, and you can get there by clicking on this box, email sign up list. So it's pretty easy to do. All right, let's look at the scheduled weather for the coming next week to 10 days. So this is the NOAA weather map, and we'll look at the climate reanalyzer here in a minute, which reflects the exact same thing. This is valid May 2nd to May 6th. They're going to give us a chemical cool down in the west and south and Midwest, and I would say basically about half. We're almost at the half and half split like we talk about often on this show. Eastern half and central areas will be cool and then warm out west, essentially. And then Alaska is also very warm. So you can see that they will be giving us the cool down here, and based on that, let's look at the climate reanalyzer, which also, it's a different site, but it sort of reiterates the same idea. So this is days 7 through 10. So again, looking at this, we have warm out west, cool back east and in the Midwest, which is what you're seeing over here as well. 7 to 10 days out, starting May 2nd. So it's going to be about 5 degrees below normal where I am. And that looks like, yeah, this darker blue area, that looks like that's about the coolest. So 5 degrees less than normal is not a huge cool off. But the point is, if they weren't doing this, we would be heating at a crazy rate. I mean, it would be through the roof heating, and they're doing this chemical cool down to lower the temperatures. I guess 6 degrees, 9 degrees below normal here in Mississippi. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a cool down in about 10 days out, 7 to 10 days out. 4 to 6 days out, similar idea. It's about the same areas, but not quite as much of a cool down. And then 1 to 3 days, that is starting really today. For the next 3 days, it's going to be above normal here and cool out west. So they're going to flip-flop it. So anyway, that is the geoengineered scheduled weather coming our way in the next 10 days or so. So again, not really all that surprising. It's what they do a lot of the time. Got a couple of articles from Israel 365 News that are worth the look. Rabbi Kessin, God is orchestrating the fall of Iran, and Trump doesn't fully understand his role. Well, rebuilding the third temple will probably be in there somewhere, I'm just guessing. May not say that in this article, but that was just something that popped into my head. Let's see. It says, something unprecedented is unfolding in the skies over Iran in the corridors of the White House. And according to Rabbi Mendel Kessin, in the heavenly tribunal itself, in a lecture that he posted on YouTube, one of the most compelling voices in contemporary Torah-based geopolitical analysis delivered what can only be described as a theological framework for the war against Iran, one that reaches back to the book of Genesis, threads through the prophecies of Isaiah, and lands squarely on Donald Trump's desk in 2026. The rabbi's core claim is simple and staggering. What we are watching is not merely a military campaign, it's a divine agenda of unfolding in real time. I don't disagree. I don't see how it couldn't be, because God is in control. This article appears to be how this is a divine appointment type of thing for Trump. Like he was supposed to be this person in charge right now. And that's pretty interesting, which is something I've been saying as well. It says the rabbi says this prophetic fulfillment, Trump, he argues, represents a positive dimension of Esau, a man whose mission is to be a man of the field, to engage with the nations and remove evil from the world. Yeah, Trump removing evil from the world. That's a good one. Trump is doing the job of Esau. He says that's biblical. To remove evil from the world and to bring righteousness is a biblical mission. And crucially, Trump's motivation must be more than a geopolitical alliance. God required that it be brotherly love. You do it as a brother, Rabbi Kessin explains, because you love him. He even addresses the question of why Trump, who has no Jewish blood, has such a documented affinity for the Jewish people. Deep down, the rabbi says, his previous incarnation was not only a Jew, but he was a patriarch. So, see, they do believe that they do think that, yes, you can be reborn again, like incarnation. You can be reincarnated. So he's saying right here, his previous incarnation was not only as a Jew, but he was a patriarch. Yeah, which that's not really that surprising that they would think that. So anyway, that is one of the two articles that I thought was somewhat interesting on Israel 365. And then here's the other one. And then this one is the last article for tonight, which is what we mentioned earlier. Trump reads Solomon's temple prayer. Now he's negotiating with Iran and Lebanon, the nations that built the first temple. Here we have the similarities comparing King Cyrus and Donald Trump. It says last week Trump took part in the America Reads the Bible event, marathon reading of the Bible and America 250 themed event, encouraging a return to spiritual foundation that shaped our country. That was live streamed from the Museum of the Bible in Washington and other locations. Trump sat at his Oval Office desk last week, hands folded over an open Bible, and read aloud the prayer God answered at the dedication of Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem. While most Americans heard a patriotic gesture tied to the nation's 250th birthday, students of Bible prophecy heard something else entirely. I bet they did. Talking about the temple. And again, the timing is really interesting, and especially with Charles coming over here in the next few days as well. So we'll see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen, but the timing is something that I'm certainly interested in more so than anything. And I do think that Trump was, to whatever degree, put in power right now to ensure that a third temple is in fact built. And I do think that they get their third temple. That's the way it looks, at least to me anyway. Anyway, hope that was interesting to you guys. And make sure you're following along. You can reach just about anything and everything on the link tree that's set up, which is what the icon right up there is, the QR code. That is, if you scan that with your phone, it takes you to this page, which has all the links to the Diamond Report across the board here, all the different mechanisms, different video channels and social media channels that I have the show posted on, either links to videos or various articles and things that I happen to put out as well. So anyway, that is there. That is what Linktree is all about. And there's a link to my Substack and Subscribestar right here at the front. The Substack looks just like this. Drop your email address in and you can subscribe pretty easily to the Diamond Report on Substack, which you'll get a link sent to your inbox. A email sent to your inbox that has all the links from this week's show. So feel free to jump on that list if you're interested. If not, that's totally fine. You can still actually access the links for the show when I post them, and that will be a simple matter of going to No Thanks, clicking through, and we can look at last week's. Here is the show, and then here is the links from last week's Diamond Report. They're all here. Everything I posted. So have a look at that, and that is accessible pretty easily on diamonddisc.substack.com. This was last week's show, Planned Deliberate Chaos. And if you want to contribute to what I'm doing, that would be greatly appreciated. And I've got lots of different monthly options if you wanted to go that route. There's mechanisms for one-time donations if you want to help what I'm doing, help me pay my bills with this show, and otherwise it's coming straight out of my pocket. I've got, I think this says 5 subscribers. There are 4 active subscribers who are helping me by paying some each month, and you know who you are. So thank you guys for doing that. There are four total subscribers on Subscribestar paying, and I think I lost one on Substack last week, so I think we're down to 6. So we've got a total of 10 people helping me a little bit each month. So thank you guys for doing that. And note that on Subscribestar, there are all these different tiers here, and yes, it does go up in price. No one's ever done any of these higher tiers, but there is an option to do one of these higher tiers and then bump it back down or turn it off after a month. So even if you just wanted to do one as a one-time donation, you can actually do that. And note that I've got one here with myself meeting with me and my good friend Miss Lynn Leoz. That's one of the top tiers here. So something you could do just by bumping up and doing that 1 month and then meet with us and then turn it off or bump it back down. So that is an option. Those are out there. People do that kind of thing. I know, not on my channel, but they do that with other people that I work with. And you can move your monthly donation up and down or turn it completely off if you want. So that option is there. I've never really mentioned that before. And the Diamond Report store is now officially closed. So thank you guys. We had 2 or 3 orders come in at the last minute. So thank you guys for doing that and supporting the show. Really, really appreciate that. And yes, the store is no longer around. If we have any other products or any other things like that come up in the future, we can set up another store. But unfortunately, it's pretty expensive, so I don't know. It would need to be something that is super important to come up with to enable a new store again. But I just wanted to mention that the store is officially closed. So I've removed those links from pretty much all of the ongoing descriptions that you see underneath the videos. So you won't find the store in there anymore, unfortunately. But that's just the way it goes. We move on. Anyway, I hope you guys have a blessed week this week, and do stay tuned for this next video. We're going to run this one about the UFO, the missing UFO and scientist. It's called UFO Disclosure Deaths Pile Up, which is a 5-minute video. So we'll close the show with that, and we'll wrap it up. We'll do it again next week. We will be into May. Can you believe it? May 3rd will be the next show, starting at 9 p.m. Central Time. So I look forward to speaking with you guys then. And if you guys come across anything you want to let me know about, feel free to drop me a line. You can do so by leaving a comment on any of the videos that I post. That's probably one of the easiest ways. Or if you're in the band group, I didn't pull up the tab, but the band group is available. That is the small group on social media called Band, BAND.us is where it is. So band.us/@the Diamond Report if you guys want to be involved in that. It's totally free. I think we've got 100 and some members in that group, and it's mostly folks who are regulars in the chat room on this show. So feel free to drop me a line and leave a comment if you want, and thumbs up any of the videos that I put out. That really helps me, and totally free and pretty easy for you guys to do as well. So yes, stay tuned for the UFO Disclosure Deaths Pile Up. So we'll do it again next week. Love you guys, and we'll talk to you again then.
He was on like a year ago saying, this group kills people, and if Trump really goes for disclosure, I think you're going to see a lot of death. Well, now it's official U.S. government study. Like, why? They're saying it's 11 scientists. Folks, it's hundreds. But it's people over gravitic control. It's not anti-gravity, folks. It's gravity manipulation, gravity control. And it's people involved with the secret space program, all of it. And they're saying, they're coming to kill me. They told me they are, and they're dead.
This katana-wielding dude, made a really big deal about, he was like, okay, listen to me. It's been independently discovered 4 other times. He said it's been suppressed every other time. This time, they're waiting for someone to publish. They're ready. And on the other side of the fence, there's multiple parties looking at each other like, didn't we tell this bitch 3 years ago that we kill people for this? Is she not listening? What is she doing? She's still doing it? What? We told her we were going to kill her 3 years ago. So I have these two different scenarios floating constantly in my life where I have people being like, do it, do it, do it. You're the one, do it. And then I have multiple people being like, they're going to kill you. Don't do it.
Every day that I have on earth is a gift and a blessing, and I'm very grateful for that because, frankly, people are disappearing. Scientists are going missing. Now they're saying they're going to investigate this. The president himself is saying they're going to look into this and see if anything's going on. It's a little bit scary. I got to say, it's a little bit scary, but you guys knew that I might still show up even though it was last minute and I've had a really rough week. Like, that's kind of like every week, but somehow we keep on making it through all of this.
Daniel List, we've had prominent UFO researchers commit suicide in the last few days and die. We have all these scientists dying. We have all these Chinese scientists dying. You're a very credible, prominent guy. I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but if you started to get a little bit of your skin crawling, a little bit concerned yourself, you know me, I'm not a dramatic guy, but you personally, but I just wanted to ask that question up front. Hope you don't mind it. Are you getting a little creeped out here?
There's no question about it. And it's great to be back with you, Alex. I do want to actually spotlight that when you took on the UFO issue and started speaking about the secret space program, I noted a genuine uptick, and I mean serious uptick in your legal issues. And I noted it sometime back in 2017, way back there.
Trump orders a real investigation, so he sends out investigators, and then all the key people die. That's pretty obvious.
There's no question about it. And I will say that, Trump going on the record right there in February and saying we're going to release all of these records pertaining to the UFO file was gigantic.
To begin releasing government files relating to UFOs and unexplained aerial phenomena. And I figured this was a good crowd because I know you people, you're really into that. I don't know if I am, but so I'm pleased to report today, I thought I'd save it for this crowd because you're a little bit out there, a little bit, that this process is well underway and we found many very interesting documents, I must say, and the first releases will begin very, very soon. So you can go out and see if that phenomena is correct. You'll figure it out. Let me know. Let me know.
We do know that General McCaslin was well respected by people who were pushing for UAP disclosure, including very senior people in Hillary Clinton's campaign back in 2016. We know he was planning to disclose UAP secrets in what was expected to be a Clinton presidency. And it's really interesting that this follows so closely, his disappearance follows so closely on the heels of President Trump's announcement that he was intending to declassify UFO files. A promise, by the way, which the president hasn't followed up on yet.
It was huge, and we saw it was interfered with by Obama. So we know that something strange was going on the inside.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
And then in the background there, you had a number of people who were silently being moved off the stage and eliminated. But I've also seen how this works directly. We're talking about DoD billionaires hanging out in the background, hardware manufacturers, defense contractors. And if you have that stroke of history, when you look across it, you can see presidents warning about this through generations from Eisenhower, Reagan, and others.